In this video, we will go through the Netflix TV series Arcane. As there are no books that focus on what happened in the show, we will go through the lore of the characters which are from the massively famous game League of Legends and go through the differences compared to the show. For example, even though Jinx and Vi are sisters in the lore, they did not grow up together at all and barely even knew each other. Also, Silco is an Arcane original character and not currently in the League of Legends game or lore. In the original lore surrounding Jace, he is characterized as a bad-tempered and arrogant figure. Also, he and Victor did not get along. If you enjoy this video and are excited for Season 2 of Arcane, remember to subscribe so you don't miss out. Anyway, let's begin. A little girl sings in a fragile voice, a sad tune. Scenes of devastation unfold in the night. Ash and embers fly, red smoke obscures statues, and then a bridge comes into view. An explosion hurls a figure, until now hidden in the smoke, a silhouette appears behind it. Its eyes glow red as it raises a rifle to finish off the man thrown by the detonation. The flash of the muzzle reveals a uniform, a soldier. The soldier advances and reloads his rifle. For a moment, the faceplate of his helmet transforms into a scribbled demon face. A chalk grin filled with pointy teeth. The girl continues to sing. A place engulfed in flames, smoke billowing everywhere, and dead bodies strewn across the ground. Two children walk through the ruins, hand in hand, a small girl with blue hair, her eyes covered by her other hand, still singing. The other child is older, with pink hair, and as she stops, the smaller one halts as well, looking up at her. Upon seeing her face and the havoc surrounding them, she ceases her song. The older girl's hand grips the smaller one tighter. Before them, a large man knocks down his opponent and turns toward the children. The older girl instinctively pushes her sister behind her protectively as the man, wearing iron gauntlets, approaches, but he's not a threat. A brief conversation transpires without words needed between the man and the older child. He glances aside and she follows his gaze, spotting another body on the burning bridge. This sight sends her to her knees, sobbing. The blue-haired child hugs her, also crying. The man drops his gauntlets and picks up the children. Through the smoke, ash, and wreckage, he carries them away. The older child looks back over the man's shoulder, and as she sees masked soldiers departing at the other end of the bridge, her fist tightens and her face turns fierce. Over the ruined bridge, a castle emerges into view. The same pink-haired girl, now a few years older, climbs a wall with daring leaps. It is daytime now, and she wears a large backpack. Looking down, she sees her sister and two boys climbing after her. She encourages them, stating that they are almost there. She reaches the rooftop first, and breathing hard, she calls out to her sister, the blue-haired girl. Powder arrives as well, stumbling over the edge of the roof, and the two of them gaze over a vast industrial city filled with glass ceilings and peculiar contraptions among the chimneys. The view is dominated by the castle perched on a hill over the city, while on the left, the sea presents an impressive sight. As the two boys finally catch up with the sisters, an airship roars overhead, close enough for them to see the intricate artwork on its hull. As the airship flies away, Powder declares that she will one day ride a ship like that, and one of the boys, Milo, raises his hand as if holding a gun and adds that he will shoot one down. He is a skinny boy with spiky hair. The other boy, a bigger, beefy youth, doubts their endeavor, but the older girl, Vi, waves away his worries. The two boys and Vi easily traverse from rooftop to rooftop, executing acrobatic jumps and navigating treacherous rain gutters. Powder keeps up for a while but seems scared at a particularly dangerous jump. After some encouraging words from her sister, the little girl follows them, somewhat clumsily mimicking their moves, and arrives on the same roof where she stumbles. She almost falls, but Vi catches her at the last second. Tension brews between the boys and Vi about bringing Powder, expressed through betrayed glances, eye rolls, and annoyed expressions exchanged among them. Moving forward, the larger boy, Clagor, who had previously expressed concern, now asks what someone called Vander would say if he knew what they were about to do. Vi points out that Vander used to pull jobs like this when he was younger, adding that they are stealing from rich people who do not need all their possessions. Soon, they reach their destination, a balcony high above the street. Clagor notes the number of enforcers down the street with some worry, but V responds that a lot of protection only means there are valuable items to steal. The glass door of the balcony is locked, and Milo begins to pick it open. However, V, losing patience quickly, simply kicks it in. The apartment inside is luxurious yet cluttered, filled with books and valuable objects. While the others are drawn to the shiny knickknacks, V first favors the books, then the blackboard. She suspects the apartment belongs to an inventor based on all the plans, tools, and complicated schematics scattered about. The kids start to fill the large bag with whatever seems worth stealing, all while continuing their half-friendly banter. On a desk beneath papers and blueprints, Milo discovers a hexagonal contraption built around a blue stone. The stone mildly shocks him upon contact. Seeing this oddity, Clagger asks V how she found this place, and her mention of someone called Little Man evokes a sense of wariness mixed with alarm. Powder wanders off, and in another room, she finds a small chest. Upon opening it, the box reveals more of the blue rocks, but these are larger and emit light from within. While she admires them, in the other room, V hears a noise and realizes that the apartment's owner is outside the door. Milo barricades the main entrance with a chair under the doorknob, and the kids make a hasty exit. Powder quickly pockets the stones before fleeing, but drops one. The gem, upon contact with the ground, begins to emit sparks. It seems to undergo some violent reaction, and soon the built-up energy releases, shattering the tiny stone and causing an explosion. It destroys a wall and parts of the balcony, showering the street below with debris and knocking the kids off their feet. Chaos ensues. As they are spotted by enforcers from the ground, V and the others attempt to escape. Alarms blare over the rooftops, and soldiers pursue the kids. More than once, they narrowly evade capture, only just avoiding instruments the enforcers throw at them. If struck, these would bind their limbs, ending the chase. After crossing an open bridge and reaching narrow back alleys, they escape using a garbage disposal system. Milo complains because V had promised they would never use the garbage sewers again, even moaning about his new shirt. When they finally reach a safe, albeit dirty haven, the boys blame Powder for the explosion, but she insists she knows nothing about it. Milo does not conceal his doubts regarding her claim. It appears this is not Powder's first debacle, and her friends grow impatient with her. V points out that despite the trouble and the enforcers involved, they just pulled off a successful raid and should be happy with the outcome instead of blaming one another. The kids return to their part of the city. Instead of guards, alarms, and luxury, all they see are sick people, rubbish, and a broken-down cityscape. The walls are vandalized and the streets are dirty. Poverty reigns in this area. Soon, the crew is confronted. Another gang of similarly aged kids attempts to steal their loot after Milo inadvertently reveals its existence. A fight ensues after V throws the first punch. This is not the innocent rumble of children, it is a brutal and bloody struggle. During the battle, Powder, who clutches their bag of stolen goods, must run, pursued by one of the attackers. She does her best to shake the boy. Though in bad shape, V, Clagger, and Milo win the brawl. When one of the beaten boys brandishes a knife, V simply intimidates him into fleeing, despite his apparent advantage. Then, V realizes too late that Powder is missing. Meanwhile, the little girl is in trouble. She runs onto a pier over dirty brown water, but turning a corner finds her path blocked by large boxes with no apparent way out. After her homemade nail grenade fails to incapacitate her pursuer, Powder throws the bag toward the water. The young man leaps after it but cannot reach it in time, and while preoccupied with that, Powder vanishes. She soon reunites with her friends. On the way home, Milo is furious with her for losing their haul, but since V is unwilling to reprimand her little sister, the boy cannot do much apart from grumbling about how Powder jinxes everything she touches. V asks him to stop, though she looks regretful over how the situation has unfolded. Via an elevator hidden in plain sight, the kids arrive in an underground city, much more worn and dirty, yet no less impressive than the one they robbed. This is a place of tainted beauty. Levels built upon levels swarm with activity. Humans and other creatures alike walk the shadowy streets, each appearing more dangerous than the last. The kids feel at home here, walking with ease. but it is clear they could just as easily become prey. As they proceed, they encounter armed heavies, contraband on sale, shifty individuals, and courtesans, elements of a criminal underground. Their destination is a bar called The Last Drop. Here, a nervous little man conducts some form of business meeting, providing tankards of beer for his partners. When he is paid for his services, he realizes he has been tricked, as the pouch contains coins of lesser value. Upon voicing his protest, stating this is not what they agreed upon, one of his business partners, a large bald man, informs him that the circumstances have changed, while a woman with a painted or tattooed face who accompanies him threatens the little man with a huge knife. His choices are simple: a bag of small coins or a blade. The barkeep, the same enormous man from the bridge who carried away V and Powder years ago, appears at the table. The painted woman is hostile towards him as well, but as the barman sits down, he tells her that she should not be rude to the one who pours the drinks. Looking up, the woman and her companion see that everyone in the bar is staring at them, some with weapons at the ready. It turns out the barkeep is Vander, who is famous and respected in the underworld. The woman recalls his nickname, Hound of the Underground. Changing their approach, the two delinquents attempt to be somewhat friendly, stating that they were merely negotiating. Vander lights a pipe and instructs them to pay the nervous man, Huck, in full, and then he will let them walk away unscathed. After a tense moment, they agree, and Vander welcomes them into the lanes. He then loses interest as he sees V and the others enter. The girl tries to conceal her bruised face beneath a hood, but cannot fool Vander. In a smaller back room, the four kids quickly agree not to say anything to Vander, but news travels faster than they do. Stepping in, the big man asks about the explosion and the chase topside. He speaks like a father, tired and disappointed rather than angry. V retaliates, accusing him of having gone soft and stating that they were simply trying to carve out a little of the wealth of the topside for themselves. She appears to passionately despise topside people and believes the underground city should revolt. Vander then sends the others out, wanting a word with V. Once they are gone, he discusses the responsibilities of a leader, lamenting that as the kids will follow her lead without hesitation, if they get hurt or captured, it will be V's fault. The girl thinks Vander is too afraid of the police force of the topside city, Piltover, but he responds that violence cannot solve their problems. After this, he sets out to tend to V's injuries. He is pleased to learn that Powder lost the bag, as now nothing is tying the kids to the crime scene. V asks, almost shyly, if they will be okay, and the man promises her he will smooth things over. Vander then leaves V in the room, first filling another bag with junk he finds around. He then berates Milo and Clagger outside the door, and then he and Clagger leave the bar for the foggy streets, the boy carrying the bag. Vander asks him to recount exactly what happened as they walk. It is evening now. Powder, in the meantime, realizes that she still has the blue gems. She runs down the stairs, presumably to share the good news with V, but before she can enter, she hears Milo criticizing her once again. V protects her sister, asserting that Powder is still very young, but Milo continues to press his point. With a sharp retort, V counters his accusations, but the eavesdropping little girl misunderstands the exchange and seemingly thinks that her sister agrees with Milo. She runs away. V chastises Milo, pointing out how he carelessly disclosed their findings to strangers on the street, which put them all in danger, an act not less irresponsible than the things Powder is accused of doing. Vander and Clagger arrive at an establishment marked by a sign overhead that reads Benzos. Vander tells Clagger not to let anyone in. Initially, the owner seems unfriendly toward the barkeep, even stating that they are closed. But their interaction quickly devolves into light-hearted teasing. The owner dismisses his assistant, a boy named Echo, who appears to be about Powder's age, and by Clagger's greeting outside, it becomes clear that this boy is the one referred to as Little Man. Vander informs the shopkeeper about the mysterious young men who followed V and the others, specifying that they are not from the upside. He adds that there are worse threats than enforcers. He touches his forearm, which is obscured by a leather brace. Outside, Echo interrogates Clagger, eager to know how the job went and whether they fought enforcers. Clagger asks him how he learned about the location they robbed, but the conversation proves challenging. Echo is very enthusiastic and full of energy. Also, a big fan of V, instead of providing answers, he showcases the fighting moves she taught him. Finally, he reveals that the owner of the robbed apartment was seen in Benzo's junk shop purchasing items, and Echo followed him home after noticing how he paid in gold without even attempting to negotiate a better price, thus acquiring the man's address. Before he can elaborate further, enforcers appear through the fog. Unlike the glowing-eyed helmets worn by the soldiers on the bridge, these officers are equipped with gas masks. Clagger attempts to warn Vander, but Echo reassures him that they are not in danger, prompting Clagger to flee before the enforcers notice him. Echo remains behind, and the uniformed officers seem to disregard the boy even as he greets them. Instead, they enter Benzo's shop, where the owner and Vander sit amicably, sipping a drink. One of the enforcers confronts Vander aggressively, stating they are searching for those responsible for the explosion in the Academy District topside, and implying that Vander probably knows who the suspects are. The older officer, a woman, dismisses the younger one, who leaves reluctantly. Meanwhile, Echo climbs the building to a lower rooftop, using a peculiar apparatus to spy on the adults inside the shop. The officer, Grayson, reveals that she and Vander have an agreement. Vander is to ensure his people do not venture to the topside, and in return, she keeps the enforcers out of the underground city. However, in light of a building being destroyed and people injured, she now needs a name, a scapegoat to present to the city before the unrest escalates. Vander steadfastly refuses to reveal V's identity. Grayson departs, handing Vander a communication device in case he changes his mind. Vander appears devastated, and Echo, observing from the roof, wears a worried expression after witnessing the encounter. In a confined space under a staircase, Powder is focused on her new bomb project. V pops her head down, asking what this one is called, and Powder replies that it's named Whiskers. Then she inquires if Powder wishes to discuss the events of the day. Powder explains how she overheard the conversation between V and Milo. She looks sad, prompting V to gently point out that Powder should not compare herself to her because they possess different skills and talents. V excels in combat, while Powder creates things that could one day prove just as effective against their opponents as V's fists. The older girl then invites Powder out for a walk, leading them to a rooftop. From this vantage point, V shows Powder parts of the Undercity, recounting how Milo, Clagger, and she suffered humiliation in certain spots, explaining that the city remembers those moments, and reassuring her that everyone experiences bad days. She even points out a stuffed animal nearby that belonged to her years ago before a bigger kid tossed it onto a pipe and abandoned it. Even V, the fierce leader and big sister, had her share of bad days. Now it's Powder's turn to share, and she reveals the blue rocks to V. The older girl advises against mentioning the gems to Vander, even though neither of them understands what they are. Standing, V looks over both cities, topside and the lanes, and asserts that one day the people from both places will respect them. In an underwater facility, the boy who attacked V and her crew appears frightened. He is shoved into a chair and surrounded by henchmen, while another figure prepares an injection, telling him he shouldn't have attacked V but should have simply followed her. The shadowy figure injects something into his own eye and informs the boy that Vander is now asking questions about him, which is not a favorable situation. He gazes at the troubled youth, one eye glowing in the dim light. Then he approaches the boy slowly, savoring the news that Vander is in trouble with the enforcers. The boy is subsequently taken away. The boss-like figure then turns to another man who appears to be working on a purple liquid at a workbench. The boss says that their schedule has been moved up by recent events and demands a demonstration. The chemist-like figure captures a cat and places it into a glass enclosure. A rat, exposed to the purple substances, undergoes some kind of transformation and effortlessly kills the cat, even cracking the glass container. The boss inquires about potential side effects, and the other man assures him that they are being managed. The man with the glowing eye implies that human trials should begin with the boy who failed him. Here are some of the major differences between Netflix's Arcane and the actual League of Legends lore. In the show, we see the moment when V realizes she has lost her parents at the start of episode 1. However, the game lore says differently. There, V was an orphan from a very young age, found floating in a bassinet, and later raised not by Vander, but in an orphanage. Next, the game's lore mentions a mentor figure who helped V become who she is. This mentor is never named and is only referenced as a barkeeper in the lanes. In Arcane, the role of mentor is given to Vander. In the game, Piltover does have a police force similar to the Netflix show, but there they are called the Wardens, as opposed to Arcane's Enforcers. The first episode of Season 1 makes it clear that V and Powder, who later becomes Jinx, grew up together as sisters. This was not how it happened in the game. Though sisters all the same, the two barely knew each other, having grown up separately. Before Arcane came out, Jinx's past was unknown. Few inhabitants of the Undercity made the connection between the innocent little girl who liked to tinker with machines and the force of destruction she later becomes, and the game's lore has no explanation for the changes. Growing up, neither V nor Jinx ever encountered a man named Silco. He does not exist in the game and was created specifically for the series. Though Shimmer, first seen in episode 1, where Singed and Silco were experimenting with it, is referenced in the game, it was never called Shimmer there, and its origins are a mystery. It does not have an important role in the game lore. In the game, Echo is not an orphan, as he appears in the series. His parents are sending him to Piltover to study, but Echo despises the place and is a Zornite to the core. Benzo does not appear in the game, though it has its pawnshop keeper named Alistar, who might have been the inspiration for Vander's old friend. In the game, it is Echo, and not Powder, who finds an abandoned hex gem in an already ruined workshop, presumably belonging to Victor. Episode 2, some mysteries are better left unsolved. At the start, a blurry vision focuses as foggy details sharpen into an image of an elegant corridor lined with tinted glass doors. A young man and woman appear around a corner. They are of similar age, with the girl in her late teens and the man in his early 20s. Both carry boxes full of miscellaneous items. Something from the girl's box slips to the ground and the man warns her to be more careful. She stops to retrieve the item while he goes ahead, inserting a key into a door lock. Despite his attempts, the door remains closed. As he notices a shadow through the glass, he realizes someone is inside the apartment. Dropping his box, he redoubles his efforts to force the door open. Inside, the blue gem powder failed to keep starts sparking. As the young man rams the door with his shoulder, the gem rolls on the floor, and just when he attempts to kick the door in, the detonation occurs. The blast throws him hard against the wall behind him, and, though dazed, he catches a glimpse of V as she runs away. Then he loses consciousness, while his companion calls out his name, Jace. Jace dreams of a time when he and his mother were caught in a blizzard, walking slowly, bracing themselves against the fierce wind. His mother collapses. Little Jace calls for help across the seemingly empty snowy field, and someone appears. The figure stops before the boy and his unconscious mother, raising a hand that holds a blue gem fragment hovering above his palm. Jace steps back as the stranger turns, lifts his staff, and symbols of blue light start dancing in the air. Colors erupt across the snowfield, and Jace's body, along with his mother's, rises from the ground. With an explosion of light, the stranger teleports them to warmth and safety. Jace asks how the man did it, and in response, the stranger gives the now-spent gem to Jace. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, still in the ruined apartment, Officer Grayson questions Jace. A third person, another young man not dressed like an enforcer, is also present. Jace tries to convince Grayson that he has nothing to do with the explosion. Grayson reassures him, stating she knows burglars had been there, but points out that the place is filled with forbidden items for which he has no permit. The third person, a few years older than Jace and walking with a cane, asks about Jace's research. He states that he works for the Academy and was sent to remove any potentially dangerous items, including Jace. On his order, Grayson places Jace under arrest. Jace finds himself in jail, staring at the same spent gem now embedded in his bracelet. The cell door opens and a small creature with a large head, lion-like mane, and pointy ears enters, lamenting on the curiosity of prisons. He comments on how only the body can be imprisoned, never the mind. The creature is Professor Heimerdinger from the Academy, an old teacher of Jace. Upon inquiry, Jace tells him he was trying to harness magic using science. but the professor refuses to listen, stating that magic, what he calls the Arcane, is far too dangerous. He tells Jace he is 307 years old and that his life experience taught him some mysteries are better left alone, with magic certainly being one of them. He also urges Jace not to mention magic at his trial, promising he will get off easy if he heeds this advice. Meanwhile, V and her crew are trying to avoid detection. They are at a hideout where V trains with a boxing machine, setting new record. The hideout appears to be an old arcade where Powder now fixes another machine, allowing her and Milo to compete in shooting. The little girl easily beats Milo, making a face at him as he again voices his opinion that she is not ready for dangerous jobs. Outside their hiding place, enforcers question people. One shows disrespect and is thrown through the tinted glass wall of the arcade, exposing Powder and the others. The leader orders his subordinates to search the kids, and Powder's hand touches a pouch on her belt containing the blue rocks. Before the enforcers can reach her, Clagger kills the lights and a brief fight ensues, allowing the crew to escape through a back door. The enforcers give chase and the group runs into another squad ahead. Just as they realize they are surrounded, Echo appears from above, releasing a ladder leading to a fire escape. Once they reach safety, V kicks the ladder, sending the nearest enforcer crashing down. She then tells Powder she needs to hide the rocks. In a room full of light, a beautiful black woman in expensive clothes, Councilwoman Medada, asks her assistant about the day's agenda. She learns that today is the day of Jace's trial. Jace, who belongs to a respected house of toolmakers, is also Heimerdinger's protege. She picks up a child's toy, intending it as a gift for someone. In another luxurious place, the girl who was with Jace at the apartment is arguing with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kiriman. The argument centers on Jace, whose trial casts an unfavorable light on their family, which has long supported him. Mr. Kiriman wants to abandon Jace, but Mrs. Kiriman sides with their daughter, Caitlin, suggesting they should speak up in his defense. A meeting takes place in the pub known as The Last Drop. Vander and Benzo lean against the bar, listening to a younger woman who argues that they should fight back and resist the enforcers terrorizing the lanes. Vander lights his pipe, reminding everyone that they have tried violence before, and it did not end well. Someone accuses him of only trying to protect V and the others, but Vander responds that he is trying to protect everyone in the underground. The young woman who first spoke retorts that Vander is no longer the person he used to be, and as she leaves, more than a few people follow her. V, Powder, and Milo agree with the woman's stance, eager for a fight, while Clagger stays silent. V turns to Echo, noticing his troubled expression, and tells him to reveal whatever secret he is hiding. The boy reluctantly speaks of the deal between Vander and Grayson. Elsewhere, Jace and Officer Grayson are in an elevator, silently ascending inside the palace that oversees the cityscape of Piltover. In a brightly lit room dominated by a table shaped like a gear, Councilwoman Medada presents an older man, the counselor with the toy she had selected earlier, telling him it is for the brightest minds and wishing him a happy birthday. The man addresses her as Mel. Another council member gives a small bag of ginkgo nuts, clearly attempting to stay on the old man's good side, but the counselor scolds him, pointing out his allergy. As they exchange words, the tall two-winged doors at the far end of the room open. Jace and Grayson enter, revealing the vastness of the chamber as the young man walks through a small murmuring crowd. The room darkens as every window is obscured by shutters. A spotlight illuminates Jace as Mrs. Kiriman, who is revealed to be a council member, announces the charges against him. Jace expresses regret, apologizing for his actions, and acknowledges that his experiments were far more dangerous than he anticipated. The council listens in silence. Heimerdinger is present, along with Mel and others, even something resembling a humanoid robot. True to her promise to Caitlin, Mrs. Kiriman speaks in Jace's defense, but the counselor, still toying with his gift, points out that Jace blew up a building. Heimerdinger steps in, noting that any scientist knows experiments can fail, while Mel questions what results Jace has achieved apart from the explosion. Jace admits he has not accomplished anything else. The council descends into an argument, and Jace is quickly painted in an unfavorable light. Eventually, in frustration, he blurts out the very thing Heimerdinger warned him against. He was experimenting with magic. The room falls silent. One council member remarks that magic is not something anyone can use or create without being born with it, but Jace contradicts her. He passionately speaks about the advancement of science and the potential of incorporating magic. His speech captures the attention of Victor, the young man with a cane, who watches from the crowd. However, Heimerdinger quickly silences Jace, reminding the council of how magic nearly destroyed the world and how it corrupts those who wield it. He insists that it must not happen again. The council concurs, with one member stating that Piltover was built to escape the influence of mages. With this in mind, they are prepared to sentence Jace to exile for attempting to use magic. At that moment, Jace's mother steps into the spotlight, explaining that her son pursued the foolish dream of magic only to make the world a better place, without understanding the risks. After considering her words, Heimerdinger suggests allowing Jace to remain in Piltover, but expelling him from the academy and banning his research. The majority of the council, including Mel, agrees. In an abandoned building in the lanes, the enforcer who accompanied Grayson to Benzo's shop meets with the man with glowing eyes. The floor and walls are partially covered by a strange, sporadic substance that clearly disgusts the officer, Marcus. He questions the other man about his identity, but instead of answering, the crime boss provides information about V and her crew. Back at home, Jace tells his mother that magic saved her life and that he will not abandon his dream. He declares that if he cannot rely on his family, he will find others who will help him. Meanwhile, Heimerdinger and his assistant, Victor, are packing up Jace's possessions, including the hexagonal object with the gem embedded in it. Victor asks Heimerdinger if Jace's experiments could have succeeded, or if the professor could have solved what made them so unpredictable. Heimerdinger dismisses the idea, insisting that everything from Jace's workshop will soon be destroyed, reiterating his belief that magic is too dangerous to experiment with. Hearing this, Victor secretly takes Jace's notes. In his underwater hideout, the man with glowing eyes, Silco, studies the liquid they have been working on. It appears more blue than purple now. Deckard, the young man who previously attacked V and her friends, initially refuses to drink the substance, fearing it will kill him. Silco convinces him otherwise with a speech about the true nature of power. Reluctantly, Deckard drinks the potion and transforms into a monstrous form. On a rainy evening, Jace attempts to open an iron gate, but fails. Inside the walls, Caitlin sits under an umbrella and tells him that her parents have abandoned him, and after the council hearing, believing him to be a misfit. When Jace asks why she is there, Caitlin replies that she is a misfit too. She asks what he plans to do next, and Jace, appearing out of options, admits he is not eager to join the family business. Mrs. Kiraman appears at the manor door, orders Caitlin inside, and silences Jace when he tries to explain himself. Her opinion of Jace seems to have changed significantly in light of recent events. At the palace, Grayson and Marcus report to the council. Mel Medada asks if anything dangerous was taken from Jace's workshop, but Grayson cannot be certain given the level of destruction. The councillor mentions that Jace's speech about magic has alarmed the public. Some council members advocate continuing their efforts in the Undercity, but Grayson believes they have been harsh enough and suggests they ease off. The council disagrees, with the robot-like member insisting they must do everything in their power to ensure the culprits are caught. Heimerdinger is notably truant from this meeting. In the last drop, Vander absently fiddles with the communication device that Grayson gave him. As he does, 3 enforcers, led by Marcus, make their way inside. Marcus steps forward and makes it clear that he knows about V and the others. He directs one of his companions to search the building. Vander, appearing jovial, offers Marcus a drink and reaches beneath the bar to grab a bottle. But in truth, he pushes a button, a contraption, a makeshift warning system that looks like something Powder would craft, triggers, alerting the kids before the enforcer can reach the downstairs door. The officer carefully examines the seemingly empty room, with the kids hiding above, clinging desperately to the ceiling, holding their breaths. Upstairs, Marcus continues to talk to Vander, mentioning an old friend he had just met, clearly hinting at Silco. He then takes Vander's pipe right out of his hand, an act of provocation that causes the patrons in the bar to rise to their feet, ready to defend their bartender. Despite their loyalty to Vander, they hesitate to attack the enforcers. Marcus casually drops Vander's pipe into his own drink, which catches fire instantly. He recalls how Vander wasn't always the man of peace he now claims to be. Vander remains composed, but responds firmly that it would be unfortunate if he were forced to put his old gauntlets on again, barely concealing a threat beneath his calm demeanor. Downstairs, the kids remain in hiding. Powder, in particular, is struggling to hold onto a tube of some sort, her grip slipping and her arms trembling. It looks as if she might fall at any moment, which would give away their hiding spot. She manages to hold on just long enough, her fingers barely maintaining their grip, until the officer leaves. Only then, when the door is safely closed behind him, does she finally lose her hold and fall. With the search turning up nothing, Marcus grows visibly frustrated. He gives an angry speech, loudly declaring that everyone in the lanes is nothing but criminals. His disdain for the people here is evident as he finally leaves the bar. Vander immediately goes to check on the kids, ensuring they're all okay. V voices her desire once again, her wish to fight the enforcers. Vander, however, is still reluctant. He tells her again that he has seen where that road leads, and it never ends well. He takes V to the bridge connecting the two halves of the city, the very place where his rebellion was crushed all those years ago. Here, he tells her that if he hadn't chosen to fight back then, V's and Powder's parents might still be alive today. He adds that her feelings are understandable, even justified, but warns her that if she continues down this road of violence, she will inevitably lose those closest to her, possibly even Powder. The truth of his words seems to resonate with V, and for the moment, she appears to set aside her plans for retribution. When she asks what they should do now, Vander admits that he doesn't have a clear plan yet, but he promises her that he will figure something out to protect them all from the enforcers. In his ruined workshop, Jace stands by the edge of the destroyed wall, staring down at the stories-long drop below. It's dark outside. On a desk behind him lay his bracelet and a sealed letter. Jace looks ready to step off the ledge. His despair is evident. Just as he prepares to take that final step, a voice calls out, stopping him. Jace turns back and finds Victor standing there, a book in his hands. Jace asks sarcastically if Victor has come with yet another list with his name on it, referencing the list of dangerous items from earlier. Victor replies that indeed he does have such a list, mainly because Jace signed every page of his notebook. Jace, though initially hostile, listens as Victor tells him that he is fascinated by his theories, what Jace calls hex tech. Jace insists that it isn't just a theory, that he has seen it work, though no one else believes him. Victor, unfazed, tells him that he himself is from the Undercity, a place where no one believed in him either. He had no influential supporters and no powerful family name to back him up. Everything he has achieved, his position at the Academy, came from believing in himself. He adds that he believes in Jace's work too, and wants to help him bring his vision to life. Victor offers Jace his bracelet, the one with the blue gem, and after a moment of hesitation, Jace accepts it, signaling his agreement to work together. V returns to the last drop and opens the door to the downstairs room. The boys are buzzing with excitement, talking about how there's word that the lanes might fight back against the enforcers. V, however, doesn't respond to their chatter. She moves directly to Powder's bed. Powder, eager and hopeful, shows V her latest inventions, assuring her that this time they will work. V agrees that Powder's bombs will definitely work this time. She then hands her the stuffed animal, the one Powder had previously shown her hanging from the pipes. She tells her younger sister to embrace what makes her different, to hold on to that uniqueness. After a moment, V turns and leaves. Powder watches her go, her face a mix of emotions, sadness, fear, and uncertainty. In a dim, shadowy office, Grayson confronts Marcus. She doesn't hold back, reprimanding him fiercely for going to Vander's bar. Her anger even turns physical as she shoves the younger officer, her frustration evident. Marcus defends his actions, insisting that he was just following the council's orders, trying to get results as demanded. Grayson calls him a fool and warns him that he might have set off a chain reaction that none of them will be able to stop. As they argue, a cylindrical object, the one Grayson had given to Vander, arrives via the pneumatic tube system. She looks at it, then at Marcus, and says there might still be a chance to avoid a full-scale war. In the last drop, a jukebox softly plays a love song. Powder, clutching the stuffed bunny, ascends the stairs. Outside, the enforcers are marching, their heavy boots creating a steady, ominous rhythm. Vander is behind the bar, pouring a drink for Powder. Marcus leads the enforcers. Their march is purposeful and unwavering. V sits alone in a small room, her eyes downcast, waiting for something she knows is coming. Vander, noticing Powder's stuffed bunny on the bar, suddenly understands. Realization dawns in his eyes, widening as the implications hit him all at once. Footsteps echo outside the room where V waits. She stands, ready to face whatever is coming. The door slowly swings open with the same song still playing. So, in the show, we learn that Jace is a protege of the Kiraman family, which was not the case in the game. He was supported by the similarly influential Clan Jopara, a family that is not mentioned in the series. Though the series portrays Professor Heimerdinger as the embodiment of caution, from episode 2 to the finale in the League of Legends lore, he is much more reckless, experimenting with magic freely. In the game, Hextech is an existing, though not widely utilized, technology. Jace expands on the research, but he did not create it initially. In-game, Jace is a bad-tempered, arrogant man, while in Arcane, Jace is depicted as passionate but full of doubts. Victor and Jace's first meeting is quite different. Their partnership in the game begins in a much simpler way. They meet at a party. In the game, Victor is perfectly healthy, and his motivation to prolong life and better human beings comes from somewhat misdirected compassion, which is the source of most of his arguments with Jace. In League of Legends lore, there is a character, Camille, who is heavily connected to and augmented by Hextech. Her family is the one who first discovered the gems, but since their origins are not explained in the series, and the inventor first combining them with technology is Jace, Camille is not part of the story at this time. Though Singed appears in this episode and several others in the game, he lived in a different time period from the other characters in the series. Jace and Caitlyn have a sibling-like dynamic, which is entirely missing from the games, where the two barely know each other. Officer Grayson, the enforcer who first appears in the lanes talking to Vander, now becomes a recurring character, as she is also the one who arrests Jace, but she is not part of the game's lore. Like Silco and others, she was created for the show. Arcane Episode 3. The base violence necessary for change. The scene starts with a dark screen, accompanied only by eerie music playing in the background. After several seconds, a figure gradually appears, sinking slowly into a body of water. It's a young Silco, descending peacefully, while an older version of him narrates, describing the sensation of drowning. Soon, the somber atmosphere shifts, and the young Silco starts struggling as someone holds him underwater. Just before his world fades into darkness, old Silco finishes his speech, expressing gratitude for the clarity this experience provided him. He thanks an old friend, and above him, outside the water, a familiar silhouette stands, Vander. The scene returns to V. As the door opens, she stands, expecting the enforcers, but instead, Vander and Benzo enter. Vander tells V how proud he is of her and entrusts her with the duty of always protecting her people. After Benzo's warning as he observes the street through the broken window, Vander grabs V and throws her down a set of stairs leading to a lower room. The girl objects, but Vander shuts the door, locking her in. Grayson and Marcus then appear at the doorway. Hearing V's protests, Grayson assumes the girl is to be arrested. Marcus, also making the same assumption, attempts to move past Vander. He asks if Vander will allow them to do their job, but the barkeep requests one last smoke, and Grayson understands he is about to sacrifice himself for V. Vander lights his pipe. Grayson approaches, unwilling to arrest him, knowing Vander is the only thing maintaining a delicate balance between the two cities. Vander insists that Benzo can take over and that the council requires a scapegoat. V continues protesting from behind the closed back door, but nobody pays attention to her. As Marcus secures Vander with handcuffs, Grayson questions why Vander is doing this, to which Vander replies there is no other way. They leave while V tries to break through the door. In the basement where she is trapped, V finds a small window through which she witnesses people running outside. There are shouts, and suddenly, blood splatters across the window. Outside, Grayson lies motionless, eyes open. She is dead. Benzo, Vander, and Marcus stand nearby, and as Benzo picks up a pipe, ready to use it as a weapon, a figure appears through the greenish fog, Silco. Benzo threatens Silco, advancing toward him cautiously, despite Vander's warnings not to proceed. Before Benzo can reach Silco, something collides with him, knocking him to the ground, and blood spills. Seeing his friend's death, Vander falls to his knees, his hands still cuffed, unable to intervene. A creature, monstrous and enormous, stands over Benzo's body. Its face resembles that of Deckard. As Vander watches in shock, Marcus confronts Silco, saying this was not part of their agreement. Silco responds that the terms have changed, tossing Marcus a pouch of coins, some of which land in Grayson's blood. From the blood-stained window, V watches as the mutated Deckard strikes Vander, rendering him unconscious. The monster then grabs Vander by the hair, dragging him away and following Silco. Marcus is left behind with the coins and the bodies. In frustration, he throws the pouch aside, while inside, V collapses, overwhelmed and crying. Victor and Jace are working frantically, trying to address the instability of Hextech. They seem to find a solution, but Jace points out that without his equipment, they cannot test their theory. Victor mentions that everything Heimerdinger confiscated from the workshop will be destroyed the next day. Jace is disheartened, but Victor takes out his keychain, revealing that all they need is currently in Heimerdinger's office. Jace asks why Victor would risk everything, and Victor explains that he also wishes to make the world a better place and believes Hextech is the way to do it. V's makeshift prison opens and Echo appears at the steps. Sobbing, he tells V that he witnessed what happened and she hugs him. V learns that although Benzo is dead, Vander has only been captured. At Silco's hideout, Vander slowly regains consciousness. He notices weapons being forged, batches of bluish liquid, and even Deckard, who now looks like himself again. Silco speaks of the necessity of violence, emphasizing that the topside will not respond to reason, only to force. Vander is battered, sporting a severe black eye, but otherwise in possession of his faculties. He warns Silco that even with an army of monsters, he cannot triumph over Piltover. Silco reveals his plan isn't to win, but merely to intimidate the topside into leaving the Undercity alone. Vander believes this path leads nowhere, and people will die for Silco's pride. Silco corrects him. It's not about pride, but about respect and the chance for a better life, something they have been denied for too long by Piltover. Vander reminds Silco that he once had the respect of the Lanes, to which Silco replies that he wants more. He aims to unite the entire underground as one nation, which he calls Zon. Silco recalls how Vander tried to drown him, and when Vander expresses his regret over the incident, saying he considered Silco a brother at one time, Silco says he has long forgiven him. However, what made him lose respect for Vander was his willingness to make a deal with the Enforcers. During their conversation, Deckard, appearing weakened, opens a door and reveals a chair. Silco shows Vander a vial of bluish-purple liquid, calling it Shimmer. He believes this substance is their opportunity against Piltover. Vander begs Silco not to bring war to the Lanes, but Silco looks at him with disgust, stating that Vander would rather die than fight for their old cause. Silco then adds, pocketing the Shimmer, that he will show Vander his true self. One of Silco's henchmen drags Vander toward the chair, while the woman who previously argued with him at the last drop watches from some distance away. At the castle, Victor and Jace attempt to enter Heimerdinger's office, but are intercepted by Melmedada. She notes how remarkable their determination is, given they risk banishment. Jace insists they can prove Hextech works, with Victor adding that they figured out how to resolve the issues together. Mel points out that even if they demonstrate the viability of Hextech, the Council will still destroy the experiment. Victor believes that Heimerdinger will be reasonable, but Mel disagrees, emphasizing that the Council is fearful of their researchers' potential. Jace questions whether that involves Mel, and she replies that she understands how scientific advancement comes with inevitable risks. A guard approaches, whistling as he walks down the dim corridor, holding a torchlight. Jace pleads with Mel to believe in their research, and she allows them a chance to prove themselves. She warns, however, that if they fail, they face exile. Mel then moves to distract the guard, saving the young inventors from discovery. Jace watches her leave, clearly impressed. In the pub, Milo and Clagger argue about which weapons they should use if Enforcers attack. Powder, feeling miserable, runs to hug V when she arrives. V, on the verge of tears, comforts Powder while telling her friends what transpired and declaring her intention to save Vander. The boys agree to help and they begin packing weapons, including Vanda's old gauntlets. Before they leave, V instructs Powder to stay behind. V also mentions the monster she saw, revealing that Echo followed Silco's party, providing the location for the rescue mission. This time, V is the one telling Powder that she is not ready for what lies ahead. She then hands Powder a flare, promising that if Powder lights it, V will find her no matter where she is. That same night, in Professor Heimerdinger's office, Jace and Victor work to assemble a machine, powering it with a blue gem. Jace asks Victor if he's confident in his plan to make it work. They activate the device, and though Jace expresses doubts, Victor assures him it will stabilize. Enforcers outside the building notice the intense light emitted by the machine. Powder, left alone, experiences a breakdown. She rips apart a toy, cries, and even hits herself in frustration. Her bag falls, spilling the gems. Noticing they're glowing, Powder realizes she might be able to use them to make her weapons work. On the rooftop of Silco's hideout, 3 figures move cautiously: V, Milo, and Clagger. They enter through a skylight. The machine seems to operate as Victor predicted, and Jace uses a dial to increase the power. However, it soon becomes evident that this is a mistake. The energy output quickly spirals out of control. A window shatters and shards are sucked back into the room, slicing Jace's face. Finally, he manages to switch the machine off, and darkness fills the room once more. Victor is left amazed. Inside Silco's hideout, V and her friends sneak around, searching for Vanda. They soon locate him, sitting restrained in a chair in worse condition than before. Vanda wonders aloud how they managed to get in so easily, and he and V simultaneously realize it's a trap. Silco appears on the wrought iron bridge connecting the room to the rest of the building, greeting V and her friends. Milo works furiously on Vanda's chains. Silco is not alone, a group of his henchmen stands behind him. He says he heard a rumor that Vanda and his children had left the lanes for good, revealing his true intent of killing them all. V instructs Clagger to find a way out while she dons Vanda's gauntlets. A massive man with a large knife begins crossing the bridge toward them, and V moves to confront him, despite Vanda's plea for them to flee and leave him. Powder approaches the hideout from the outside. The sky is dark with clouds. V stands ready to fight. Her tattooed opponent, nearly twice her size, moves in her direction. Powder climbs the wall and, through a crack, catches sight of this scene, prompting her to hurry to find an entrance. Silco gives the signal, and after a tense moment, the fight commences. V takes down the large man quickly, but another attacker comes at her, then another and another. They swarm around V. Milo continues his struggle to free Vanda from the chains, and Powder scales the wall outside, nearly falling as a rotten wooden beam breaks beneath her weight. Vanda encourages Milo, who is nearly panicking, assuring him that he's got this. The fight rages on as Milo finally unlocks the first shackle, and Clagger finds a weak spot in the wall, preparing to break through. The second lock comes off, freeing Vanda's feet. V appears unstoppable, dispatching opponent after opponent. The woman who earlier mocked Vanda's weakness begins approaching V, but Silco stops her. Instead, Silco hands Deckard a vial of shimmer. Deckard, now evidently addicted to the substance, accepts eagerly. As V finishes off the last of the henchmen, Deckard steps onto the bridge, still in the process of transforming, clearly in pain. V charges toward him, and Vanda urges Milo to hurry. Deckard grabs V easily, gripping her by the neck. Vanda once again begs for Silco, this time for V's life. But Silco coldly informs him that it's too late. Deckard hurls V to the ground, and she loses one of her gauntlets. Seeing this, Powder, perched on a windowsill, opens her bag and takes out the toy she damaged earlier in the day. The mutated Deckard advances on V, his misshapen body with veins glowing from shimmer. V tries to crawl away as Milo works on the locks, and Clagger uses an iron bar to smash through the wall. V reaches a room and, with a final effort, closes a metal door to block Deckard's advance. Vanda is nearly free, with only one arm remaining restrained. As Deckard pounds on the door, trying to break through, Vanda commends V for fighting well. In the dim corridors of Piltover's council hall, 2 enforcers rush ahead, led by Professor Heimerdinger. Their destination is his office, but upon arrival, they realize they cannot enter. Victor's cane is wedged across the door handles, locking it from the inside. In there, the machine is active again, and Victor and Jace work frantically to stabilize it before Heimerdinger and the guards break in. The blue gem floats in midair, carving runic patterns. Jace, recalling the man who saved him and his mother, adjusts the dial carefully. He manages to succeed just as Heimerdinger forces his way inside. The professor finds Jace and Victor levitating beneath a dome of blue light. Jace pushes a gear toward the gem, teleporting it to Victor. Heimerdinger's amazement turns quickly into frustration as he orders them to stop levitating. Victor admits he doesn't know how to stop it. Heimerdinger acknowledges that Hextech has proven possible, but asserts it is not the path Piltover should take. Mel then enters, reminding Heimerdinger that the decision lies with the Council, not him. She adds that perhaps the time has come for the Age of Magic to begin, to which Jace corrects her. It's the time for Hextech. Powder inserts 2 blue gems into the monkey-shaped toy equipped with symbols. Inside, Deckard continues his assault on the door. Clagger is nearly through the wall, and Milo is almost finished with the last lock as Powder winds up the toy, pleading for it to work. Deckard damages the iron door, almost breaking through. Silco watches, tense with anticipation. Clagger makes a small hole, and Powder sends her makeshift weapon forward, one of the gems between the monkey's symbols, striking with each clink as it marches toward the monster. Clagger works faster, and V braces herself, struggling to keep Deckard out. The monster notices the monkey toy moving, the energy of the gem inside intensifying with each hit. A moment of calm, the hole is finally large enough for an escape, and Vander is freed. Then the symbols clash again, and the gem detonates. The first explosion throws Powder off the building, plunging her into the water below. The second nearly kills Silco, but he is saved by the woman beside him, who loses her arm in her heroic act. The boxes of shimmer stashed around ignite, killing the chemist. The third blast takes Deckard. One of the blue rocks flies into the room where V and the others are, instantly killing Clagger and severely wounding Milo. A moment later, the collapsing roof ends the boy. Powder, sinking, reaches out for the stuffed bunny V had given her. From a distance, Marcus observes the devastation. Vander, still alive amidst the wreckage of the warehouse, glimpses the lifeless bodies of Milo and Clagger. Then he searches for V. Outside, Deckard is alive too, and seemingly unharmed for the most part. Silco, back on his feet, orders Deckard to kill any survivors. Some of the henchmen V had beaten earlier are also getting back up. Seeing that V is still alive, Vander shifts the piece of wall that pinned him down, breaking free. He stands, using the shackles they had restrained him with as makeshift knuckle dusters. His first attacker is down in a heartbeat, and the next one fares no better. Deckard, however, overpowers him. Although, from their brief clash, it's evident that a fully rested, uninjured Vander would be unstoppable. V, pinned under rubble, turns and sees her friends are dead. She then spots the head of the monkey toy. The building around them is deteriorating, with fires erupting. Vander stands again, ready for another round, but before he can strike, Silco stabs him in the back. That isn't enough to stop the Hound of the Underground, and turning around, he seizes Silco by the throat. The crime boss has a flashback to when Vander had tried to drown him, just as back then, Silco escapes by stabbing Vander. The flashback shows how Silco cut Vander's forearm too, explaining the brace Vander wore. Now, Silco pushes Vander off the bridge, and he falls into a batch of shimmer. He remains alive and hears Silco order Deckard to find V. Vander reaches for a vial. Deckard lifts the debris off V, ready to kill her, but a shimmer-enhanced Vander intervenes, crushing Deckard's throat and killing him in seconds. He appears to struggle to control himself, but does not attack V. Instead, he turns towards Silco, who attempts to flee. Vander then realizes V is in imminent danger, trapped in a burning room, and, seizing her, jumps through the wall, carrying her to safety and sparing Silco's life. Outside, the dying Vander utters his final words to V, telling her she must look after Powder. Thunder rolls in as the barkeep exhales his last breath. V stands up, and from around the corner, Powder appears, enthusiastically declaring that her bomb worked. Shocked, V asks if she is the one responsible for all this. Powder then notices Vander's lifeless body, and V demands to know why she did it. Powder says she was trying to save her. Seeing Clagger's bloodied goggles, Powder realizes the full weight of what she has done. Her earlier excitement dissipates, and she begins sobbing, repeating that she only wanted to help. V, unable to contain her fury, slaps her hard, yelling that she had told her to stay home. V then tells the crying Powder that Milo had been right all along, calling her nothing but a jinx. As the younger girl weeps uncontrollably, V walks away, despite Powder's desperate pleas not to leave her. Just around the corner, V collapses, crying herself. Still calling out for V, Powder kneels beside Vander's body where Silco finds her, the knife still in his hand, covered in Vander's blood. Seeing this, V jumps to her feet, ready to save her sister, but Marcus grabs her from behind. Holding a piece of cloth in front of her face, he tells her Silco will kill her, and V loses consciousness due to whatever Marcus dosed the rag with. Marcus then carries her away. The rain begins to fall. Silco kneels next to Powder, asking where V is. Powder throws herself at him, not attacking, but embracing him, sobbing that V abandoned her and that she is no longer her sister. Silco raises his hand but ends up only hugging Powder. He promises retribution, and as the burning building, the bodies, both living and dead, fade into the distance. The last ember extinguishes, and the end credits roll in darkness. In this episode, V uses Vander's old gauntlets, which explains her fondness for this weapon type throughout the series. In the game, her iconic gauntlets were mining devices, the same as in the series, but she acquired them when a heist on a mine went wrong, and she had to dig herself and others out of a collapsed tunnel. This heist was a pivotal moment in V's life and was carried out with a gang, similar to the one V leads in the series. But it did not include Milo and Clagger as the two were created for the show. Similarly, the enforcer Marcus, who made a pact with Silco and had a significant impact on the first half of the series, is an original character developed for the show. Though we see Victor and Jace becoming fast friends in this episode, with their interests and moral codes aligning, they were more rivals than friends in the game lore. They worked together for a period of time, but their arguments were constant, as Victor had strong ideas about enhancing humanity even at great cost, such as the loss of free will. Their cooperation ends due to one of these moral disputes, and later on they even fight at least once. Mel Medada, the councilwoman who helps Jace and Victor gain access to Heimerdinger's office, is another character who did not exist in the game lore before the show. Professor Heimerdinger is a member of a race called the Yordles. In the game's lore, the people of Piltover are quite xenophobic, especially towards Yordles. So they develop a magical glamour to hide their true appearance from humans. There is no indication in the show that Heimerdinger ever had to use such tactics. He is depicted as a respected academic and leader, responsible for overseeing technical and scientific advancements. Heimerdinger is not the only Yordle in the game, with at least 3 other important characters being from that species, but he is the only one in the show. In episode 3, we see Savika saving Silco's life and losing her arm in the process. None of that occurred in the game, as Savika was never part of it and only appears in the show. This is the first time we hear about Zon, which in the show is Silco's dream, a united Undercity independent from Piltover. In the game, Zorn was literally under Piltover, not connected by a bridge, but by elevators and fissures. The show depicts it more like being slightly downhill from the inner city, with sporadic, deeper regions. Though the dual city's troubles with the lane's struggle for equality serve as the background for the show's heroes. In the game, the separation of Zorn and Piltover occurred long before the time of V, Jinx, and the others. Arcane Episode 4, Happy Progress Day. On an early morning, as the sun rises over the horizon, Professor Heimerdinger lights a lamp. A knock sounds at the door and Jace enters, mentioning that Heimerdinger summoned him. The professor states that the city of Piltover is celebrating its 200th anniversary today, and Jace adds that it is shaping up to be a fantastic progress day. The young man now appears more composed and assured compared to his earlier self. They stand before the statue of an inventor, and Heimerdinger tells Jace how everything the man ever created ended in failure. There is a dog-like pet in the room, bearing a striking resemblance to the professor with its bushy head of fur. Heimerdinger continues, explaining how the failed inventor eventually set aside his personal ambitions to dedicate himself to serving the people and building a brighter future. He then informs Jace that the council has decided Jace should give the Progress Day speech this year, and Jace points out that traditionally it is Heimerdinger who delivers that address. The tiny professor replies that he concurs with the council's decision. He further reminisces about how Jace's hex gates reinvigorated Piltover, connecting it to the rest of the world, suggesting that some time has passed since Jace and Victor first activated their invention. Jace appears to be deeply honored, and Heimerdinger suggests that he surely has something new to present on this special occasion. Jace then invites the professor to their laboratory, stating that the new chapter of Hextech is ready. Heimerdinger opens a set of tall balcony doors, and together they watch as the city awakens, which now seems slightly more industrialized than before. An airship comes into view, hovering in front of a contraption based on Hextech. Suddenly, it is flung through the sky, or perhaps teleported, elsewhere in a burst of runes and blue lights. It is a beautiful, sunny day in Piltover. A Progress Day fair is underway, filled with enthusiastic families. Steam-powered machines, robots, and other technological wonders are everywhere, captivating the crowd, which includes several non-human creatures. Mrs. Kiraman, looking slightly older, addresses a small crowd about Jace, describing him as her family's most famous protege. The young man is present, surrounded by admirers. As he leaves, Mrs. Kiraman adds that Jace has become a busy man. He sneaks up on a female enforcer wearing what appears to be a ceremonial uniform. The enforcer is revealed to be Caitlin, and it becomes evident that years have passed as she is now in her early 20s. She admonishes Jace, mentioning that she is working, while glancing toward her mother. Jace inquires if they are still on bad terms, and Caitlin replies that even though she is now in law enforcement, her mother pulls strings to keep her in safe positions. Jace teases her, saying that at least by guarding the fair, she has a front row seat to his speech later on. They exchange some sibling-like banter before Jace departs. At an airship dock, a vehicle is just arriving. Nearby, a masked figure hides, standing on a hoverboard and holding what resembles a reinforced pocket watch. One of the dockhands is the heavily tattooed man who works for Silco. A nervous officer notices that some of the barrels they are unloading are marked with a pink X, but says nothing except to ask for the shipping manifest. In response, the woman who saved Silco's life hands him a pouch of coins. The mysterious figure on the hoverboard moves closer. It turns out he is not alone. Several others emerge from hidden corners, all standing on similar flying boards. They launch an attack on the docked airship, while one of Silco's men exclaims that the firelights are here. The masked airborne fighters zoom around, throwing bombs that quickly incapacitate Silco's people by encasing them in some kind of amber or crystal substance. Upon opening the suspicious barrels, the firelights discover they are filled with shimmer. Their leader instructs the group to burn it all. Two of the firelights descend into the hull of the airship, and one of them accidentally triggers a trap that closes the door behind them. On it is a drawing depicting a glowing, grinning monkey face. The masked warriors immediately panic. One of them nervously states that she is here, trying to see if someone is lurking in the dark corners. It is evident that someone else is in the hull, and as one of the masked men throws a flare to illuminate the shadows, they see a swing with the word "boom" written on it in glowing letters. Suddenly, someone glides between them, and upon looking down, the firelights realize that blinking bombs are attached to both of them. Outside, Silco's henchwoman sees the trapdoor lifting slightly as the bombs detonate. The airship shakes from the explosion. The trapdoor then opens and smoke floods the area as a figure emerges, striding towards the remaining firelights. It is a tattooed, slender girl with braided blue hair that almost touches the floor, Powder, now in her teens. In moments, she quickly eliminates two more firelights using bombs resembling children's toys, before drawing a gun and confronting the last one standing. Another enemy surprises her from behind, but she swiftly deals with him as well. Meanwhile, the leader of the masked fighters attempts to destroy the shimmer shipment. Another firelight is ready to drop a flare into a pool of the substance, but Powder intercepts, grabbing her hand and, upon removing her mask, mistakes the warrior for V. The sight of V paralyzes Powder momentarily, though the memories are warped, appearing as if childlike scribbles distort them. The pink-haired firelight drops the flare, igniting the shimmer beneath them. After a few seconds, Powder regains her composure and shoots the other woman. Observing this, the Firelight leader attacks her, despite his pocket watch indicating that the incapacitated henchmen are about to break free. Another Firelight swoops down and rescues him just as Powder retrieves a machine gun and, in a frenzy, destroys everything around her indiscriminately, paying no mind to her allies. Silco's henchwoman, Sevika, confronts her, pointing out that she was meant to protect the shipment, not obliterate it. The younger girl stares her down. In their workshop, Jace and Victor are discussing their latest invention. Victor expresses uncertainty about whether Heimerdinger or the Council will approve their idea, but Jace argues that they have fulfilled every requirement from the Council so far, and now it's time they take control of their own invention. Professor Heimerdinger arrives, accompanied by his pet, eager to see what the two young inventors have been working on. Jace presents the blue rocks, reminding Heimerdinger of their inherent danger, while adding that his goal with Hextech was to bring magic into everyday life. He then unveils a small box containing similar blue objects, now formed into perfect little spheres. Jace refers to them as Hextech gemstones. He demonstrates that even when struck by a hammer, the new gemstone remains completely stable, emitting only a flash of light instead of causing a deadly explosion like their previous prototypes. Initially, Heimerdinger is impressed. The inventors proceed to show him the new portable devices and marvels made possible by the stable Hexgem. The professor acknowledges that it is an excellent beginning, but insists that they still need at least a decade of research to ensure it is completely safe. He expresses concern about what this magically enhanced technology could do if it fell into the wrong hands, urging Jace and Victor to refrain from making it public until they find a way to prevent its weaponization. Both young men are disheartened, especially Victor, who is eager to see their invention improve daily life now rather than in some foggy future. At the docks, Caitlin is assigned to guard the remains of the still-smoking airship, while other enforcers take statements from the witnesses, including the bribed shipping officer. Kate sneaks into the damaged vehicle, searching for clues, and finds several. Taking photographs, she follows a blood trail down into the hull. There, she finds the tattooed man who, having been injured in Powder's frenzy, seems to have been unable to escape the scene. He claims innocence, stating that it was all Powder's doing. He refuses to divulge anything further, adding that his employer would kill him if he spoke. Before Caitlin can press for more information, a higher-ranking officer arrives, Marcus. He reprimands Caitlin for disobeying orders and meddling in an ongoing investigation, assigning her the night shift at the fair as punishment. The Undercity is thriving now, filled with neon signs and people. The center of activity appears to be the last drop, Vander's old bar, now under new management. This becomes evident as Silco's enforcer Sevika approaches the establishment, now featuring a neon facade. The bar has changed on the inside as well. It now resembles a nightclub more than a pub, with flashy lights and loud music. Signs of technological advancement are present here too, though in a less dignified manner, mostly used as body enhancements. In Silco's office, Sevika complains about Powder, telling Silco how the girl ended up hitting their own allies. Silco dismisses her concern, stating that accidents happen in battle, but Sevika insists it wasn't a mere mistake. It was a sign of instability. Silco cuts her off, reminding her that her job was to ensure the shipment's safe arrival, and she failed. Sevika leaves, visibly irritated. Silco prepares an injection for his eye, lamenting how the Hex Gates brought prosperity to Piltover while leaving the Undercity further behind. He then inquires about what transpired at the docks, and Powder, who is perched on some beams above, answers that Sevika has already told him. She jumps down, visibly unsettled, and admits that seeing a pink-haired woman threw her off. Silco gives the injection to her and reassures her that V is gone. Powder insists she knows that. Though she is clearly unstable, Silco tells her that today's failure set them back by weeks, calling her Jinx. She apologizes and gives Silco the injection in his damaged eye, which causes a violent reaction, and he sheds a glowing blue tear. Silco then tells Jinx that Sevika will handle the aftermath and that she should focus on her bombs. Jinx is visibly unhappy with this, but Silco insists she needs some time to herself. Mel Medada is hosting an elegant party attended by various council members. Mel, however, remains outside on the balcony when another woman approaches her, commenting on the fundraiser's success. She adds that Mel's mother would be proud, though Mel doubts it. When asked, she admits she doesn't feel like socializing, stating that the only person who currently interests her is Jace, whose face is visible all over the city on billboards and even on airships. At that moment, Jace arrives searching for Mel. In a room away from the festivities, he confides in her that Heimerdinger wants them to slow their research, but Mel disagrees. She points out that today is Progress Day, and with people from all over the world visiting, it is the perfect opportunity to showcase new innovations. She adds that while Heimerdinger is a distinguished scientist, he is also old, and the city needs a forward-thinking leader like Jace. She speaks about inventors and reminds Jace that it is his speech now, and he has the freedom to decide what to say without interference. Elsewhere in the Undercity, Jinx sits on a massive halted fan, testing bombs by dropping them into a chasm, showing little regard for her own safety. Milo appears behind her, not as he looked in life, but as a more demonic figure whose face momentarily resembles a sketch. Jinx talks to herself, or perhaps to the dolls surrounding her, which are modeled after Milo and Claggor. She believes that Silco thinks she is weak and that he prefers Sevica over her, and she tells the dolls she will prove Silco wrong. As the loud applause echoes, Victor appears both anxious and unwell. Jace approaches and suggests that Victor join him on stage, but Victor declines. He asks Jace if he has prepared a speech, while Mrs. Kierman introduces the young scientist. Jace takes a sip from his mug, which bears his face and the words, "Man of Progress," before ascending the few steps to the stage. The audience erupts in cheers as he appears. Mel is among the crowd, as is Heimerdinger, who looks slightly apprehensive. Caitlin remains outside, on duty, listening to the crowd's enthusiastic reaction. Jace begins his speech by talking about his humble beginnings, coming from a family whose factory produced hammers. He then points to the Hex Gate, which is visible from the window, prompting another round of applause. He continues, saying that their work is not yet finished and that they have a new invention to reveal. Heimerdinger, sitting in the front row, raises his bushy eyebrow at this statement. Backstage, Victor is ready to pull the lever that will unveil the new Hex Gems, but Jace hesitates. After a brief pause, he announces that they will share the latest technology when it is ready. He still manages to save the speech, painting a picture of a bright future, and as the audience cheers once more, fireworks burst outside the windows. However, Mel and her assistant have left, and Jace watches them depart with some regret on his face. The Hex Gem, unused, lies backstage while Jace remains out front, basking in the celebration. Outside, a few enforcers are on a cigarette break, discussing the speech. One of them expresses his disappointment, saying he expected more from someone touted as a genius like Jace Tallis, especially after seeing him teleport the blimp recently. Caitlin, also on duty, corrects him, clarifying that it was an airship, not a blimp, and airships are constructed differently. Her colleagues dismiss her, saying they look the same, just a big balloon. They proceed to mock Caitlin over her privileged family background. She remains quiet. Moments later, she notices fire. One of the fair's kiosks is ablaze. Caitlin raises the alarm and orders another officer to call the fire brigade. She also grabs a fire extinguisher, while 3 other enforcers advance into the burning structure, having heard a child's voice pleading for help. Inside, they realize the voice is coming from a radio. Simultaneously, Caitlin spots a monkey symbol on the wall, the same one she saw on the attacked airship. Recognizing the trap, she attempts to warn her fellow enforcers, but it's too late. A detonation kills the officers inside, and the blast throws Caitlin several meters away. It turns out the fire was a distraction. As Caitlin struggles to rise, she sees Jinx entering the palace, laughing before Caitlin loses consciousness. In the pale morning light, the young inventor's workshop is vandalized and robbed. Graffiti covers the walls. In the council chamber, at the gear-shaped table, Victor and Jace are seated, with Victor reporting that the new Hex Gem is missing, along with their research documents and other items. Marcus, standing beside them, comments on how the situation is escalating. The council members argue. One says they have lost contact with the Undercity, but its residents are still their people. Mrs. Kierman believes the Undercity cannot be controlled by Piltover, while Bolbok, the robotic council member, asks Jace if the stolen Hex Gem could be weaponized. The councillor responds, noting the capabilities of those in the Undercity, mentioning shimmer and body modifications. Standing up, Jace agrees that a capable individual could use the Hex Gem for any purpose. He takes full responsibility, stating it was his duty to protect the Hex Gem and he failed, and suggests suspending the use of all Hextech technology, including the Hex Gates, until the crisis is resolved. Some council members disagree, pointing out that closing the Hex Gates, even just temporarily, would severely harm Piltover's economy. Jace argues that the safety of the city and its people should be paramount. Heimerdinger asks if Jace is truly willing to sacrifice what he's worked for all his life, while the councillor bursts out, stating that without teleportation technology, he cannot sell his goods. Mel, who has remained silent until now, intervenes. She says both options are flawed. Instead, she proposes making Jace a council member, pointing out that he has shown his dedication to the city's safety, is willing to sacrifice his life's work, and possesses the expertise needed to secure the Hex Gate if provided the necessary resources and authority. Jace is taken aback by this suggestion, and another member notes that the council has always had 7 seats, but no more. When asked about Jace's qualifications, Mel reveals her plan. She states that Jace has the same qualifications as Professor Heimerdinger. The old professor immediately understands her maneuver. Seeing the merits of the proposal despite its implications for him, Heimerdinger votes in favor of Jace taking his seat. At her hideout, Jinx listens to loud music from a gramophone, dancing around while working on new weapons. She examines several items she stole from the workshop. Silco is there too, repeatedly calling her name, but she doesn't hear him until he silences the gramophone with a strike. He is furious, but as he recounts the number of enforcers Jinx killed and the damage she caused, she simply giggles. Then she shows him the Hex Gem, which leaves him speechless. Pulling a lever, Jinx sets off fireworks inside the cave, wishing Silco a happy progress day and hugging him. An injured Caitlin sits in her room, surrounded by flowers, staring at a piece of evidence while playing with her gun. Jace enters, carrying more flowers, asking about her condition. Caitlin tells him she's made progress. She mentions the symbol found at both crime scenes, sharing her theory about a mastermind behind the Undercity's criminal activity. Jace asks if she has proof, and Caitlin admits she does not, but believes that presenting a strong theory might make Marcus listen. Jace says the council will need more than just theories to act, and Caitlin asks why he suddenly cares about the council's stance. He reveals that he is now on the council. Caitlin laughs at first, but then realizes he is serious. Jace offers her a position as a member of his personal security team. She refuses, pointing out it is a desk job, while she wants to be a detective. She adds that she already has a job, but Jace tells her that she doesn't. After her injury, her parents had Marcus reassign her for her safety. Angrily, Caitlin tells Jace she doesn't need charity and asks him to leave. Later that night, wearing her uniform, Caitlin is on a boat heading towards an ominous building, a prison. Once there, Caitlin informs the jailer that she needs to speak with the man she found in the airship's hull. He tells her it won't be possible for some time, as the man has been attacked, resulting in a broken jaw. Caitlin asks who attacked him, then descends in an elevator, intending to visit the attacker's cell. Inside is a heavily tattooed figure, hands and forearms wrapped in gauze, striking the wall repeatedly. The inmate turns as she realizes Caitlin is outside her cell. It's V. In this episode, Heimerdinger mentions that the city of Piltover is 200 years old and that he was present when the city was founded. In the game, the city's exact age is unknown, but it is stated that Piltover was built on the ruins of an ancient city that was at least 3,000 years old. The Hex Gate, an invention of Jace and Victor, does not exist in the game. Instead, Piltover has the Sun Gates, contraptions that allow regular ships, rather than airships, to travel safely. Heimerdinger's pet, the dog-like horned creature often seen following him around, is an addition made by the show, as the animal does not appear in the game, at least not associated with the professor. Heimerdinger tells Jace about Professor Stanwyck Pididdly, whose statue is seen in the episode. He recalls him as a real patriot of Piltover's past, but in the game, Pididdly lived in the same time period as the other main characters of the series. Though in the series, it is Heimerdinger who finds Victor and becomes his mentor. In the game's lore, it was Stanwyck who took Victor under his wing. Heimerdinger also remembers Pididdly as a failed inventor but an essentially great man. However, in the games, Pididdly was a credit hogger. stealing Victor's inventions and claiming them as his own. This episode marks the first appearance of the street gang named the Firelights. Though a similar band appears in the game, it is called the Lost Children of Zorn, and its creation, while bearing similarities to the Netflix counterpart, happened for different reasons. We see Jinx working as part of a team in the employment of Silco. The League of Legends version of her had no such connections and mostly worked alone for the sole purpose of creating chaos, which she thrives on. In the game, Jinx never shows interest in Hextech, apart from sabotaging Hextech devices to halt Piltover's technological advance, and she never directly attacks Jace's laboratory either. We see Jace become a council member due to Mel Medada's machinations. That never happens in the game, where Jace is both an inventor and a hero, a protector of Piltover, but never a politician. Arcane Episode 5, Everybody Wants to Be My Enemy. In a foggy forest outside Piltover, a young Caitlyn practices shooting. Targets pop up all around and she misses none of them. After reloading, another shot rings out, but it comes from someone else, Grayson. The two appear to be having a competition, which Caitlyn wins, hitting one last target, only to realize Grayson was there first but chose not to shoot. There is a celebration at the Kiraman house, but Caitlyn is absent from her own party. On a cold balcony overlooking Piltover, she confronts Grayson, asking if her parents paid her to throw the competition. Grayson denies this, saying she just thought Caitlyn deserved to win. She then tells Caitlyn that being a good shot means she can protect the citizens of Piltover as an enforcer, and that's enough of a reward for her. Grayson then asks Caitlyn why she picked up the rifle. With the flashback over, an older uniformed Caitlyn stands in front of V's prison cell. She tells the prisoner that she couldn't find any record of her and can't figure out why she was imprisoned. V evades the question, and Caitlyn asks why she attacked the tattooed man. V offers no answer. As Caitlyn turns to leave, she pauses upon hearing Silco's name. Seeing her confusion, V tells her to get on with whatever punishment she has planned. Instead, Caitlyn shows her the photograph of Jinx's monkey drawing, and V finally reacts, eager to know where Caitlyn saw the graffiti. For the first time, V's face is clearly seen, revealing a tattoo of her name and a nose ring. Caitlyn asks if the tattooed man works for Silco, and V tells that everyone in the Undercity works for Silco. She repeats her question about the monkey symbol. Caitlyn tells her about the attack and demands proof of Silco's involvement. V says she can provide it, but not from inside her cell. Caitlyn initially scoffs at the idea of releasing V, but soon realizes that if she is to navigate the underground city, she will need a guide. Caitlyn shows a form to the jailer, claiming it was signed by council member Jace Tallis. The jailer assumes Caitlyn wants V beaten and eagerly offers to do so, but Caitlyn has other plans. The form is for V's release. Caitlyn asks how many times he has beaten V, and he admits he never counted. The cell door opens, and without a word, Caitlyn sighs heavily and walks away, assuming V will follow. On a grey day at a cemetery, Marcus delivers a speech. A crowd of enforcers is assembled, saying a final goodbye to their fallen comrades. 6 caskets are laid out. A young girl, around 10 years old, is also present. The enforcers raise their rifles, saluting their colleagues with a round of gunfire. Marcus drops the first handful of dirt on the caskets, then, accompanied by the young girl, leaves. Though there is little resemblance between them, she calls him Daddy when asking about the bust atop a mausoleum that Marcus has led her to. The bust is of Grayson. In Silco's office, Marcus confronts the crime boss, pointing out that he promised to keep Jinx under control. Yet Marcus has just lost 6 people to her. He adds that he can't keep Silco and his operation safe unless Silco gives him a scapegoat for the council. Marcus demands Jinx, but Silco refuses, lighting a cigar and telling Marcus to blame everything on the Firelights. Marcus dislikes the idea and asks what will happen if he refuses. Silco reminds Marcus that his high position is due to him and that he could do even more for Marcus in the future if he continues to cooperate. Silco implies that the beneficiary of future endeavors doesn't have to be Marcus, and the officer understands the veiled threat. Silco beckons one of his men, who hands Marcus a pouch of coins, calling it an anonymous donation for the families of the fallen enforcers. Marcus leaves the room in anger, but without protest. Silco enjoys his cigar, and the smoke ring he produces transitions into the magical circle of a firing hex gate as the scene changes. Inside the building that houses the Hex Gate, Jace works diligently. He realizes that yesterday's attack was just the tip of the iceberg and that smuggling has been ongoing for some time. According to manifests, Victor says they're wasting time doing others' work instead of focusing on Hex Tech. Jace responds that now that he's on the council, this is also his responsibility. Victor questions what will happen to the people who are suffering now, whose lives could be improved by the next chapter of Hex Tech. When Jace says they will be able to help soon, Victor angrily interrupts. Before Jace can reply, Marcus appears and Jace confronts him, criticizing the Enforcer's failure to stop unauthorized Hexgate use. Marcus attempts to dismiss the orders, suggesting they consult other council members, but Jace is resolute. He then asks if Marcus has a suspect in the robbery, to which Marcus replies that the culprits are the Firelights. While Marcus gives a brief report, Victor, leaning on a handrail nearby, starts coughing and soon coughs up blood. Dizziness overcomes him and he almost falls into the enormous machinery of the Hex Gate, but Jace pulls him back. Victor insists he's fine, only suffering a headache, but Jace doesn't seem convinced. Jinx reads Jace's notebook, trying to understand the principles of Hex Tech. She explains to her dolls, Clagor and Milo, that the key lies in the runes, which, when combined with mathematics, create the gateway used by the Hex Gate. She has built a crude prototype to harness the Hex Gem, but when she activates it, the machine overreacts, throwing her backward. Jinx has a flashback to when she used the old crystals to make a bomb, seeing her friends die again. The machine shuts itself off and Jinx breaks down, repeating that she made a mistake before running away, leaving behind the machine and V's old stuffed bunny, which is still crackling with energy. In broad daylight, V looks over the now unfamiliar city. Caitlin suggests taking the train, but V deems it too risky and leaps off the ledge she has been standing on, surprising Caitlin. V moves effortlessly through the environment, executing daring jumps and dives, while Caitlin follows clumsily. V hasn't lost her agility and reaches the Undercity in minutes. Like Topside, the underground city has also changed. As she lands, a man and a woman stop V, intending to mug her. V compliments the man's jacket. Caitlin arrives just as an elderly creature steps off the train, the same one she saw boarding Topside, and V welcomes her to the lanes, wearing the man's jacket. She tosses one to Caitlin as well. Caitlin complains about the danger of their route, and V remarks that her little sister could do it when she was only 7, and that everyone in the Undercity moves around like that. V's attacker, tossed into a garbage container, groans as she walks away. In their workshop, Victor is adjusting a Rubik's Cube-like glowing device, manipulating it with a controller apparatus. The device has luminescent runes on each of its surfaces and it levitates. Victor tells Jace that, according to legends, magic can achieve far more than what they are currently using it for, while a young woman, their assistant, walks through the room. Jace asks if this new direction of Victor's is safe, to which Victor replies that, naturally, it is not. In the lanes, V and Caitlin visit a street food vendor named Jericho. He is a huge, greenish humanoid with pointed ears and a missing eye, primarily communicating through grunts. While V eagerly eats, even mentioning how much she missed this type of food, Caitlin looks disgusted by the options on the menu. Instead, she questions why they stopped there and if Jericho is an informant. V responds that she is hungry, adding that Caitlin has no idea how awful prison food is. The Enforcer accuses V of not having any real information on Silco. But just then, Jericho hands her a piece of paper with a mysterious symbol on it. V pockets the paper and walks away while Caitlin looks after her, showing some regret over her outburst. In a concert venue, Jace and Mel are listening to violin music. Mel tells Jace that he is being too harsh on Hexgate users, thereby straining previously flourishing, if not entirely legal, arrangements. It appears many of the council members handled the regulations around commerce leniently, and they are now disgruntled. Mel warns Jace that those in power are only looking for an excuse to take control of the Hexgate away from him. Jinx visits the old arcade where they once tried to hide from the Enforcers. The place appears abandoned and has seemingly been so for a long time, perhaps since they rushed out all those years ago. Finding a plate with Milo's face scribbled on it, part of the boxing machine, she hears echoes of the past, Clagor and Milo bantering. The scoreboard still carries V's name. A crow suddenly startles Jinx and she shoots it. She then looks at the boxing machine, recalling how V used to practice with it, and reinserts the target featuring Milo's face. Activating the machine, memories overwhelm her, again distorted by childish drawings, and she sets off to fight. She attacks it unrestrained, but after giving her best effort, the name POW, indicating powder, remains only the second best after V. Seeing this, Jinx shoots the machine, hitting Milo's plate. V goes to the last drop, her old home, realizing that it now belongs to Silco. Caitlin, now dressed in the clothes of V's attacker, concealing her uniform, makes a condescending comment, prompting V to turn away in disgust. The concert continues, and Heimerdinger appears to be enjoying it immensely, while Jace and Mel Medada continue their argument in the gallery. Mel refers to bending rules as favors, and Jace bursts out that he never wanted anything to do with politics. Mel points out that with his new office, Jace can now bend the rules in his direction as well. An older woman named Amara, who has previously appeared in gatherings of important people, enters their secluded balcony. She informs them of a surprise she faced that morning. Enforcers at her door, questioning her operations. Mel reassures her it was just for show, adding that Jace is present and ready to negotiate, willing to restore special trading rights to those who align with his views. Amara responds that Bulbok has other ideas. Mel tells her to invest in the future, Jace, instead of investing in the past with Bulbok. The young inventor listens to all of this, appearing increasingly disturbed. He makes a decision and, turning to Amara, asserts that Mel is correct. Every investor in Hextech will be among the first to benefit from its newest advancements. This convinces the older woman, who leaves satisfied. After this, Mel watches as Jace moves around the venue, meeting powerful businessmen and council members, striking deals, while telling her assistant that Jace turned out to be a great investment himself. By the time the music concludes, Jace has made arrangements with almost everyone important, leaving out only Professor Heimerdinger, who appears oblivious to the dealings happening behind his back. V knocks on a door marked with the same symbol Jericho gave her. The place turns out to be a brothel, and V says it is the place where all secrets are revealed. Caitlin appears uneasy upon seeing the activities around her and is unsure of how to proceed. V explains that Caitlin needs to act as if she possesses what these people desire in order to get what she needs. When Caitlin still doesn't understand, V bluntly tells her she is very attractive and should use that to gather information. For the first time, V calls Caitlin Cupcake. She then asks if Caitlin prefers men or women, but before she can respond, V grabs the first passing person, offering Caitlin up. Leaving her to deal with the customer, V heads to meet the boss of the establishment, who is a small, pointy-eared female. The madam recognizes V instantly. Marcus is at Silco's office again. He informs the glowing-eyed crime boss that Jace is a council member now and determined to uncover the truth about the Hex Gate. Marcus points out that if he falls, Silco's entire operation is at risk too. Silco produces a grenade stating that Marcus has just found evidence against the Firelights. Marcus takes the grenade, mentioning things have escalated beyond control. Silco asks if he plans to become a martyr by detonating the grenade and killing them both. Marcus imagines doing so but cannot muster the courage, eventually leaving without further comment. Silco remarks that Marcus will eventually betray them and tells Jinx, who is perched on the beams overhead, that she needs to hurry up and figure out how to turn the Hex Gem into a weapon. Jinx says she cannot do it and suggests Silco give the task to someone she calls the Doctor. Silco insists he trusts Jinx alone with this responsibility, and she admits that she keeps seeing her dead friends whenever she attempts to work with Hextech. Silco reassures her that everyone has their own demons. Inside the brothel, the madam expresses her condolences to V regarding Vander and the others. V points out that nobody seems eager to oppose Silco, to which the madam responds that some have tried, but Silco is too powerful. V inquires about Powder, but the madam has no knowledge of her whereabouts. She suggests that Silco's left hand is a regular visitor, and she could instruct one of her workers to gather information on Powder. Upon leaving, V spots Caitlin engaged in conversation with a woman, seemingly answering her earlier question. Smiling, V walks away. Jace stands on a balcony overlooking the city enveloped in the night and at his creation, the Hex Gate, still active at this late hour. Mel approaches, complimenting his handling of the negotiations, to which Jace responds with a smile, saying he learned from the best. Mel brings up his research and Jace shares that his father made hammers, tools used to build Piltover, adding that with magic, those same people could create much more. Mel reflects on how the world is changing before their eyes, saying her family often takes what they want and rarely gives anything back to society. As she speaks, she gently touches Jace's hand. Jace admits he owes his success to her, and Mel moves closer, grasping his hand and kisses him. For a moment, Jace looks surprised, but then he returns the kiss. In the laboratory, Victor continues trying to adjust the Rubik's Cube-like device, seemingly without success. Their bespectacled assistant observes the gadget, calling it beautiful, to which Victor moodily responds that he can't get it to work. The woman reassures him that he will figure it out. She attempts to lure Victor away from his work, suggestively asking if he would walk her home, but Victor insists he will sleep in the workshop. Miss Young, the assistant, reminds him that there is a tomorrow, implying he could take a break. However, Victor merely wishes her a good night, not even looking at her. She seems as though she wants to say something further, but just sighs and leaves. Victor picks up the control arms once more, resuming his work. While Victor struggles, Mel and Jace are still embracing one another, kissing passionately. Another unsuccessful attempt by Victor sends him into a fit of frustration, and he strikes his workbench, scattering papers everywhere. As he stares at the device, his vision blurs and he coughs up blood again, collapsing shortly after. Elsewhere, Mel pushes Jace onto a bed. As they make love, Victor's blood appears to unlock the mechanism. The scenes of the device showing different worlds and Jace and Mel at the height of their passion melt together, ending with the view of the actual starry sky. Thunder brews as Silco tells Jinx that he almost died in the water, in which their reflections now shimmer. Jinx answers in a bored voice that she knows the story already. Silco continues anyway, describing how Vander wasn't who he seemed to be. And Jinx recalls that Silco thought of Vander as a brother, yet was betrayed by him, still not hiding her boredom. Silco then says he has something new to share and adds that on that fateful day, a weak man died. He submerges himself in the water. As he emerges, he says though a weak man died, a strong one was born in his place. He tells Jinx, who finally starts listening, that the pain of betrayal can either destroy a person or transform them into something much greater. He says she must let Powder die, explaining that the fear of pain controlling her stems from her old self. Silco extends his hand and Jinx takes it. He tells her she is stronger now and that strength was always her destiny. He adds that she is perfect. With a motion almost resembling an attempt to kiss her, another moment where their father-daughter dynamic blurs uncomfortably, Silco pushes her underwater. Enemy plays as V walks the lanes, her hood up and head down. She passes a band playing the song in the street. From the shadows, she spots Sevika, who is engrossed in a card game, enjoying herself. The song continues as Marcus sits in his office, drinking. He appears upset, and after looking at a framed child's drawing of himself and his daughter, he cries out and throws his glass in frustration. Mel wakes up, her hair spread across the pillows. She is alone in bed. As the music dies down, Jace sits beside Victor's hospital bed. Victor is in bad condition, even needing help breathing through a nasal cannula. He slowly wakes up, noticing Jace at his side. Jace appears distraught, unable to finish his sentence about what the doctors said, but Victor interrupts, asking how much time he has left. The music picks up again. Sevika wins her round, about to collect her coins, when V's knee crashes into her face. Coins scatter as Sevika's cigarette falls to the ground. The henchwoman's opponents jump to their feet as she goes down. They flee as Sevika stands, addressing V by name. V calls her a traitor, easily overpowering her, and Sevika responds that they gave Vander a choice. Suddenly, something glows beneath Sevika's cloak, which she constantly wore over her left side, indicating she lost her arm when saving Silco from Powder's bomb. Something pushes V away and Sevika delivers a powerful kick, sending her flying. She then drops the cloak, revealing a shimmer-enhanced mechanical arm, which instantly doses her with the drug. It doesn't transform her, showing Silco has refined it over the years, but enhances her strength. Though V is faster, she cannot compete with the mechanical arm and the shimmer, soon finding herself in trouble as Sevika's metallic fingers close around her throat. With a knee to Sevika's groin, V pulls herself free and strikes back, sending the henchwoman to the ground. V lures her into a narrow alley, limiting Sevika's ability to swing her enhanced arm. and uses the walls to her advantage, repeatedly bashing Savika's head against them. Once the criminal is down, kneeling on the robotic arm, V demands information about Powder. Savika tells her Powder isn't a prisoner, but instead works for Silco as Jinx. Savika uses her distraction to stab V with her claw-like fingers, adding that Jinx is essentially Silco's daughter now. She is ready to finish V off when, from a nearby footbridge, Caitlin shoots at her. The bullet damages Savika's mechanical arm, shattering the shimmer tank and rendering it useless. Caitlin fires 2 more shots, but both hit the shoulder where Savika's arm's mechanism covers her body, and she escapes. Jumping to the street level and keeping her rifle ready, Caitlin approaches V. V tells her that letting Savika leave was a mistake and that she will alert Silco, but Caitlin retorts that it's V's fault for blowing their cover by attacking her. She helps V to her feet. V calls her Cupcake again, and Caitlin protests against the nickname. V responds that she's as sweet as a cupcake, while supported by Caitlin. Still pressing a hand to her injury, she walks away slowly. Jinx is hard at work, once more listening to loud music. She seems willing to give Hextech another chance when Savika, dripping shimmer from her malfunctioning mechanical arm, enters Silco's office. He reprimands her for making a mess. Jinx appears to make progress with Hextech, and above her desk, the old stuffed bunny is nailed to the wall with its arms outstretched as if crucified. Savika tells Silco that V is alive, which finally elicits a reaction from Silco, appearing genuinely shocked by the revelation. Now, here are some of the differences. We see Caitlin beating Grayson in a shooting competition. Throughout the series, it is mentioned a few times that she is a decent shot, and this is a reference to the game. In Arcane, Caitlin is almost fired as an enforcer after Jinx's attack due to her mother's influence, who wants to keep her safe. In League of Legends, however, Caitlin is the Sheriff of Piltover, a rank we see first Grayson, then Marcus holding in the show. Though V was in and out of prison in her early years, that was in Zorn, not Piltover, and she wasn't released on false pretenses as she was in the show. V returns to the Undercity, finding it thoroughly changed. This return happens in the game too, but there she is a warden, or as the game's equivalent of the Enforcers. This episode shows the beginning of the reluctant partnership between V and Caitlin. In the game, this happens as well, but they are official partners as police officers. V is determined to find her sister, Powder. That doesn't differ much from what happens in the game lore. Only in League, V is looking for Jinx as a warden, tasked with finding and arresting the woman who caused so much trouble to Piltover. Though one of Victor's famous inventions, the Hex Core, appears in this episode and they will continue to do so, another one, a sentient robot named Blitzcrank, has yet to show up. Skye, Jace, and Victor's assistant is another original character who only appears on the show. In the series, the Hex Core is shown missing one of the runes it has in the game, which might explain why Victor can't make it work properly. V starts to call Caitlin Cupcake in this episode. This is a reference to the game where bear traps with cupcakes used as bait are one of Caitlin's weapons. Arcane Episode 6, when these walls come tumbling down, a kid jumps into a body of water with a joyful shout. Some distance away, downriver, a young Victor winds up a model ship. He appears to be around 10 or 12 years old and already uses a cane. As he operates the toy ship, a girl of similar age wearing swimwear watches him from a rock overhead. Her name is Skye, and when a younger child's voice calls her, she smiles at Victor and climbs over the rock, leaving. Victor sets his boat in the water and, grabbing his cane, starts to follow the little contraption. Somber violin music plays as he does so. The boat moves much faster than Victor can, and as he tries to keep up with it, he stumbles and falls. The little ship enters a cave. Descending a rocky pathway, Victor follows, arriving in a cave illuminated by glowing plants. He watches as a man picks up the boat from behind a rock. A wooden door in one of the larger rocks suggests that the man lives there. A huge creature appears next to the man, lizard-like but much larger, with a pale pinkish color. It lets out a cry which frightens Victor, but the man says there is no need to be afraid, revealing he has been aware of Victor's presence all along. He asks if Victor built the mechanical boat, and the boy nods. The man then inquires why Victor isn't playing with the other children. When Victor steps forward, leaning on his cane, the man says that talented people are often lonely. Victor asks about the creature, and the man introduces it as Rio, adding that she is a mutated animal he created. He hands one of the glowing plants to Victor, who offers it to Rio. The giant lizard takes it gently from Victor's hand, using multiple tongues. It seems satisfied with the snack, and the man tells Victor the creature is dying, but he's trying to save it, as the mutation must be preserved. Victor asks if he can help. The man accepts, saying they could be lonely together. An adult Victor sits in the mouth of a large pipe protruding from the side of a dam. Professor Heimerdinger approaches, commenting that some things apparently never change. He adds that he remembers, as if it were yesterday, finding a younger Victor sitting at the same spot. Then, his furry face is saddening, and Heimerdinger tells Victor he has heard about his illness. Victor asks if Heimerdinger ever thinks about death. The professor says he thinks about the death of his friends, and Victor replies that Heimerdinger's remarkable legacy renders him immortal. Heimerdinger says that Victor has accomplished much, but Victor responds that it means nothing and he will be forgotten, even by the professor. Heimerdinger points out that those who shine the brightest often burn out faster. Mel stands in front of a painting holding a palette. Jace arrives, noting he had no idea Mel was also an artist. She responds that there are many things he doesn't know about her. Jace apologizes for sneaking out the previous night, and Mel accepts his apology coldly. Jace, sitting down on the balcony floor, tells her that Victor is dying, which finally draws a reaction from Mel. She sets down her tools while Jace theorizes, suspecting that harmful gases inhaled during childhood may be behind Victor's condition, adding that it's a problem they could solve with Hextech. Mel sits next to him, and Jace says that although Victor saved his life once, now he can do nothing to repay him. Mel says she did not realize they were so close, and Jace calls Victor his brother. Then he leans down, resting his head in Mel's lap. The gesture surprises her, but she does not pull away. Instead, she asks why he is telling her all this, and Jace replies that when he's with her, he feels capable of anything. It's apparent that their night together had a greater impact on him than it did on her. Yet, she opens up a little, telling him she is an exile because her family does not consider her worthy of being a Madada. Jace scoffs at the idea of Mel not being good enough for anyone. She tells him he should be with his friend and that he isn't alone, whatever happens. They face Mel's painting, a large canvas depicting Piltover Harbor. Jace voices his admiration for the artwork. Victor sits in the workshop, taking shallow breaths as he watches a device turn and swirl on its own. He recalls how his blood entered the mechanism, and now it seems to react to his touch. The last drop appears empty, with only a bartender wiping glasses behind the bar and a slow number playing on the jukebox. The door opens, but no one is in the doorway, and suddenly Jinx is sitting on one of the stools, startling the bartender. She calls him Chuck, though he corrects her, saying his name is Theorem. Jinx plays with the stolen hexgem. He pours her a drink, and Jinx asks where everyone is. Theorem explains that Silco ordered his men to find and grab some girls. Jinx wants to know who the targets are and why she wasn't sent with the others. Theorem tells her only that the girls they are after badly beat up Savika. Jinx hugs him, and as she walks away, calling him Chuck again, he realizes she has attached a bomb to his back. However, when it explodes, it only covers him in pink paint. V is in bad shape, and her injury still bleeding. She can only walk with Caitlyn's aide, who says Silco's people aren't far behind, and they cannot stop. They have to navigate a stone wall on their way down, and V tries her usual jumps, but fails. Bouncing off beams supporting a neon sign, she lands hard on the ground. Caitlyn follows while a masked firelight watches from a distance. Moments after Caitlyn starts her descent, pursuers arrive. Assuming V and Caitlyn took the road, the goons run in the wrong direction. Savika enters Silco's office, reporting that the henchman lost V's trail. But as the chair swivels, it's not Silco sitting in it, but Jinx, who asks Savika who they have lost. The woman steps toward Jinx angrily but triggers a trap, and green smoke fills the room. As Jinx dons a gas mask, Savika coughs and collapses. When she regains consciousness, she is tied to Silco's chair. Jinx slaps her hard. She jokes about getting off on the wrong arm, pulling a large knife from Savika's mechanical limb, and threatens her healthy shoulder with it. Savika is quick to spill, revealing that Silco's target is none other than V. Jinx's world shatters, with her familiar scribbled drawings appearing over everyday objects. Savika says V is looking for her, but being with an enforcer, probably not trying to reunite the family. Jinx accuses her of lying. Savika laughs at her, saying that with V back, Jinx will fall apart in no time, proving to Silco how useless and even dangerous she is, recalling the loss of her first family. For a moment, Jinx seems about to cry, but then just laughs at Savika, spinning her in the chair. Marcus arrives home looking as stern as usual. As he violently sets down his badge, he hears laughter from upstairs. Entering his daughter's room, he is shocked to find Silco and two of his men. The crime boss is playing with the little girl, telling Marcus how kind she was to let them in. Marcus wants to talk outside, but Silco insists they are playing, and asks if Marcus remembers V. He then tells Ren, the little girl, that V's father went on a journey, and Marcus said V went with him. Yet, the woman is back in town. He then asks Ren if she can imagine how sad it would be to be separated from her dad, pointedly looking at Marcus. Now Marcus is frightened. He insists that V is safely locked away, but Silco corrects him, saying she is in the lanes. Silco describes V's companion, and Marcus recognizes Caitlin. He tells Silco that Caitlin cannot be controlled, a curse of being a Kiraman, and she freed V without permission. He then begs Silco to let him fix it, and Silco says everyone makes mistakes and that V and Caitlin must disappear forever. Marcus agrees. Silco then destroys the card castle he and Ren built, saying again to Marcus as the little girl watches in fear that accidents happen. Victor shows Jace his latest results, explaining that the device now reacts to organic matter, causing a plant to grow in seconds. Victor lists the implications, and Jace adds that this new direction of research could potentially save Victor's life. Just then, the plant dies instantly, and Victor admits he cannot figure out why living things are rejecting the changes the device makes. Jace assures him that it is merely another problem to solve, but Victor is pessimistic, suggesting it might be too late for him. Jace says he'll ask Skye to find Heimerdinger, hoping the old scientist can help them, revealing that the young girl who once watched Victor is now their assistant. Caitlin catches up with V, helping her up. Ahead is a dark place filled with sick people and beggars, a slum, even by Undercity standards. The inhabitants are deformed and seem to fear light. The women enter a building, and looking up, V sees, or perhaps remembers, powder playing on the beams. Caitlin tries to clean V's face, but V slaps her hand away. Caitlin says their endeavor will only work if they trust one another, and V replies that it cannot work. She adds that the top side will always betray those from the lanes, and somewhat sarcastically, Caitlin asks if Piltover is the reason for everything bad that ever happened. V admits it's not the case, while still seeing a very young Powder playing around the building, giggling or drawing on the walls. Caitlin tells V that despite everything, she thinks she has a good heart, and V hears Vander saying the same before she passes out. In the laboratory, Heimerdinger stares at the new device, asking what it is. Victor tells him he named it Hex Core, adding that it is a piece of hex tech that can learn and adapt. As the two inventors discuss the properties and possibilities of this new technology, the professor seems to have a flashback or vision, seeing a figure emerging from a fiery place surrounded by red lights. He then says that the hex core must be destroyed, explaining that a long time ago he witnessed entire nations being erased by something resembling the core. Jace points out that the hex core could save Victor's life, and Heimerdinger, noticing Victor's improved appearance, becomes even more certain the technology must be destroyed. He states that the device's existence violates the Academy's ethical code, and he will ensure it is confiscated and destroyed. Jace responds that he will bring the matter before the council. The professor leaves, his unusual horned dog trailing behind. Jace looks disheartened, but Victor says there is someone else who might be able to help them. Jace tells him to proceed, as he needs to prepare, though he doesn't say for what. Caitlin leaves V in her old home. As she steps outside, the hooded figure they saw earlier waits for her, asking if V is okay. Instead of answering, Caitlin pulls her rifle, startling the small, shivering man. His hood falls, revealing more of his face. It's Huck, the nervous man Vander helped when trouble arose over a deal, now deformed but still remembering his debt to the late barkeep. Caitlin tells him V is badly injured and needs a doctor, and Huck admits doctors are hard to find there. He adds that he knows someone who might be able to help and, putting his hood back on, hurries away. Caitlin keeps her rifle aimed for a moment longer, but then lowers it. He leads her to a kiosk where a creature, only showing its pointy teeth, asks the nature of the problem. Caitlin explains that V has been stabbed. The creature withdraws with a snarl, and Huck tells Caitlin that she brews potions that help people with shimmer addiction, something Huck clearly suffers from. The enforcer asks why he takes the drug, knowing its effects. Huck replies that for once he wanted to be the one others feared, not the other way around. The potion maker returns, placing a small vial on the counter and demanding a trade. Caitlin hesitates, unsure of what valuable item she can offer, then draws her collapsible, enforcer-issued rifle and offers it. The creature adds the final ingredient to the potion, apparently shimmer, and closes her kiosk while Caitlin is mid-sentence thanking her. Huck's eyes follow the glimmering potion eagerly. Caitlin invites him to see V, but Huck refuses, stammering something about how V knew him before, clearly ashamed of his current state. He apologizes and Caitlin hugs him before leaving. Jace sits at the gear-shaped table of the council, writing with a fountain pen. Marcus arrives and places a grenade on the table, stating it belongs to a member of the Firelights, the same weapon found at the docks and the fair. He adds that he believes more attacks are coming, and Jace voices confusion over how the entire smuggling operation went unnoticed for so long. Marcus says that unless Jace wants enforcers to search everyone entering Piltover from the Undercity, he can't prevent a possible attack. Jace says that is exactly what they'll do. Marcus, about to leave, mentions the order Jace supposedly gave through Caitlin to release a prisoner, asking if he can assist. Jace clearly hears about this for the first time, but says everything is under control. The council now convenes in the same room. Professor Heimerdinger addresses them, saying the city has lost its way and no longer stands for the values it once held. He says they have lost sight of what truly matters, adding that greed and pride have divided them, but there is still hope to unite and act as one. He speaks of accountability, and Jace attacks immediately, asserting that Heimerdinger must be held accountable as well. He blames the recent dramatic events on Heimerdinger, stating they all occurred under his leadership. Jace recalls how the professor is always saying what not to do, but never presents ideas that advance them. Heimerdinger assumes Jace's outburst is due to his advice to proceed slowly with Hextech research. Jace points out that, unlike Heimerdinger, humans do not have centuries. They need progress now. He then declares the city needs leaders focused on the future and calls for a vote to retire Heimerdinger from active leadership. No one seems willing to make the first move, not even Mel. But after a few moments of silence, she votes for the professor's removal. Slowly, all the others raise their hands as well. V wakes up seeing Caitlin and, behind her, a very young Powder. Caitlin makes her drink the potion, which instantly revives her. As she gasps for air and tries to rise, Caitlin holds her down and a tender moment passes between them as they both seem to realize they are almost kissing. Caitlin breaks the moment, standing and asking about the name Sevica mentioned. She leans against a column of sorts, which almost falls. Examining it more closely, she sees the names Violet and Powder on it, indicating the beam was used to measure the height of children as they grew. She puts 2 and 2 together and asks V who Powder is. V says Powder is her sister, who she believed was dead, but now thinks otherwise and plans to find. She does not tell Caitlin that Powder is Jinx. Caitlin asks how she lost track of her sister and why their parents haven't kept her informed. Angrily, V replies that their parents were killed by enforcers. There is a noise outside and V opens the door. Silco stands there, surrounded by Shimmer addicts and his henchmen, holding 2 vials. He says he always wanted to talk to V, then hands a vial to Huck, revealing his betrayal. She questions him about Powder and Silco says he set her free. He continues, saying he once believed V was the best of the family, but now thinks Jinx has outgrown her. As he speaks, Jinx ascends a staircase elsewhere, carrying a machine gun with multiple barrels. The addicts start to transform, showing that Shimmer can still have that effect. Jinx seems torn, holding the Hexgem in one hand and the flare V gave her years ago in the other. V tells Silco she will find her sister and undo whatever he did to her after she destroys his empire. Inside the building, Caitlin continues to push the unstable beam. The transformed addicts attack V. She delivers one powerful punch, not at an opponent, but at the beam. Caitlin has been weakening, and the entire building, along with the attached neon sign, collapses around them. V and Caitlin escape. Jinx remembers V's words about finding her and lights the flare. V climbs somewhere, while back at the building, Silco survives as the falling debris somehow avoids him. Jinx stands with blue sparks flickering around her from the flare, with Milo now appearing beside her, crying and ghostly pale. Clagger also appears in a similar form. V and Caitlin run through the streets, while enforcers prepare on the bridge connecting Piltover with the Undercity, setting up barricades, loading rifles, and installing floodlights. Silco takes out his frustration on one of his own men, beating and possibly killing him. V encounters a random man in the street and then spots Jinx's flare. Victor approaches the cave entrance, recalling how he once found Rio, the giant mutant lizard, hooked up to tubes and in pain. He had asked why the man did it, and the response was that the aim was not to save Rio, but the mutation she carried. Now, as an adult, Victor returns, stating that he finally understands, while the mysterious man stands before a glass container holding Rio's remains. Silco arrives back at his office to find it vandalized by Jinx. Savika hangs from the ceiling with her clothes and mechanical arm painted with a single word, liar. Jinx still holds the dying flare as it releases its final blue smoke. She throws it angrily, assuming V will not come, but V appears a moment later, calling her powder. V hugs her and Jinx drops the hex gem, embracing her sister in return. They both cry. V explains that she never abandoned her, but was arrested before she could come back. Jinx asks if Marcus is responsible, but V isn't certain. Jinx then asks if V is real, and V reassures her. Jinx cries, telling V she has changed. At that moment, Caitlin catches up, and Jinx aims her machine gun at the Enforcer. She feels betrayed, seeing that Savika was right, and that V is indeed with an Enforcer. In her movement, Jinx accidentally kicks the hex gem, which Caitlin notices. She realizes that V's sister, Powder, is actually Jinx, while Jinx starts having another meltdown. Ghost Milo appears again behind her, eyes scratched out with white X marks as if from an old photograph. She hears voices and tells them to stop, but Caitlin says no one is speaking. V calls her Powder again, but Jinx insists that her name is Jinx and Powder is gone. She points her gun at V, accusing her of only coming for the hex gem, but V denies knowing what it even is. V gently touches Jinx's arm, and Jinx's world fractures, clouded by drawings and haunted by phantom voices. She hears a noise, but this time it is real. The firelights emerge from the darkness. Jinx opens fire, but the firelights are too quick, moving around on their hoverboards. V manages to strike one down, and in the ensuing chaos, Caitlin dives after and catches the hex gem. Jinx is in a different state of mind now, enjoying the fight and recklessly almost hitting V. One of the firelights kicks Caitlin unconscious and takes the hex gem. V, witnessing Jinx's unhinged behavior for the first time, tries to intervene, but a firelight hits her on the head, causing her to pass out. He is about to kill V, but the firelight leader stops him, instructing him to take her instead. Jinx tries to prevent this, but the firelights use a black smoke flare, and by the time the smoke clears, Jinx is left alone. This episode shows a younger Singed, since the flashback with him takes place before he was injured in the explosion of Silco's first shimmer factory. He does not have his face covered and burned, as seen in later appearances and in the game, and his name likely isn't Singed yet, either. Rio, the giant lizard, is a member of a species called Oxytel. They are known for their regenerative abilities, which suggests that even back then, Singed was already working on Shimmer. In Marcus's house, when Silco's henchman is going through a picture book, we can see Teemo in it, a playable character from the game. Although there is undeniable chemistry between V and Caitlin in the series, their video game counterparts have never been romantically involved, despite fans shipping them for a long time. The scene where the council forces Heimerdinger into retirement never happened in the game, and the professor remained a counselor throughout the game's history. Throughout the series, Heimerdinger is often mentioned as being over 300 years old. In Yordle terms, however, of which race he's a member, this counts as a relatively young age, as the game depicts other Yordles much older than him. In many episodes, including this one, Jinx is shown to have hallucinations and hear voices. While the show explores her mental state thoroughly, the game mostly portrays her as a chaos-loving anarchist, not unlike Harley Quinn from the DC universe. This episode heavily features Silco. Though he is not in the game, his character design closely resembles that of Jen, a villain in League of Legends, while his role in Zorn as a cunning crime boss is not unique, with the game depicting more than one of those. Jace is shown slowly falling for Mel. This is Arcane's invention on more than one level. Mel does not exist in League, and Jace was never depicted as romantically involved with any other character. The Firelights once again attack by zooming around on their hoverboards. This is something the series developed, as in the game, no character has that kind of transportation. Arcane Episode 7, The Boy Savior. We begin with a graffiti-style montage featuring the Firelights, accompanied by rap music. Each member is briefly shown, with some depicted beating up enforcers. V and Caitlyn sit on the floor of a dark room, back to back, shackled to pipes, their heads covered by bags. Caitlyn confronts V, accusing her of leading them into two of Silco's traps. V disagrees, suggesting they aren't in Silco's hands, as they would already be dead if they were. Caitlyn then questions why V didn't tell her that Jinx is her sister, and V retorts by pointing out that Caitlyn wasn't completely honest either, neglecting to mention the glowing stone she was clearly after. Caitlyn sighs but doesn't respond, as a door opens and someone approaches. She hears V being taken away but is powerless to act. V's bag is removed and she first sees the white bat-like mask of one of the Firelights hanging on a belt. Then, looking up at the face of the person, she notices bat-like features. Grey skin, sharp teeth, and large ears. The figure leaves her with the leader of the Firelights. V mocks the leader about his mask, questioning whether he's shy or ugly. The leader removes his mask, revealing that it's Echo, now a young man. Echo questions V about the Hex Gem and Jinx. She corrects him, saying her sister's name is Powder and recalls their old friendship. Echo says that people change and V agrees, looking pointedly at him. Echo asks if V is working for Silco, and she passionately denies it. Echo, initially composed, finally shows emotion, saying he thought V was dead, and now she has returned with an enforcer. V realizes Echo has been watching them and asks why he didn't reveal himself sooner. Echo explains he wasn't sure he could trust her. They argue, but V steps forward, showing she has already freed herself from her handcuffs, and hugs Echo, calling him Little Man, and saying she missed him. Echo hugs her back, shedding a tear. Elsewhere, Singed, the scientist from Victor's childhood, examines the blueprints of the Hex Core. His face, now burned and partially covered by a mask, suggests he is the chemist who aided Silco with Shimmer. He survived Powder's bomb after all. Singed asks to see the Hex Core itself, but Victor explains that it may be difficult. Victor admits he has tried everything to make it work, but failed. Singed suggests the problem may lie in the subject, not the device, explaining that living creatures resist change. He shows Victor a vial of Shimmer, implying it could alter nature itself, erasing its reluctance for said changes. Victor asks if the substance works on plants, but Singed points out Victor didn't come for plant experiments. He came because he is dying. Singed warns that taking Shimmer will lead to hatred and disgust from his peers, but that is often the cost of progress. He reveals he once worked with Professor Heimerdinger, but left due to their differing views on the subject. Victor believes Jace will understand his decision. Jace works in a forge, half naked, repeatedly pulling a lever that fans an enormous fire. As a component flies off, Mel enters, teasing him about his delicate work. Jace asks how she found him. Mel notes that with Heimerdinger's forced retirement, Jace is essentially leading the council, a thought the young inventor finds daunting. She mentions the reinforced border control causing issues and notices the bomb mark escaped Jace. He explains it's well made and whoever designed it was highly skilled. Mel asks if that's what's troubling him, and Jace admits his guilt over betraying Heimerdinger, who was his mentor. Mel reassures him that Heimerdinger will eventually understand. She reminds Jace that he can now deliver Hextech to those in need without restrictions. Jace says his priority is saving Victor, who has disappeared along with Caitlyn. Mel promises to buy him some time with the council while he figures out his next move, then leaves. In Silco's office, Savika reports that profits are down as business has halted due to the new border control. Silco explains that he ordered the controls to prevent V and Caitlin from returning to Piltover. Savika expresses concern that Marcus might have turned on them. Silco lights a cigar as Savika mentions that the Kimbarans demand a meeting. Silco is reluctant, but Savika tells him this is more of an order than a request, indicating that his control over the Undercity is not absolute. Sighing, he grinds out his cigar and walks away, saying he needs to find Jinx. Savika, despite her dislike for Jinx, advises Silco to give her time to return on her own. Silco seems to consider this. At her hideout, Jinx hears Milo's voice accusing her of losing V again. She angrily responds that V was taken, not lost. As usual, her world cracks, revealing scribbled faces. She uses a nail gun-like device to stitch up her wound from the firelights and argues with the voices, insisting V came for her and that she doesn't care about the Enforcer. Her mental state continues to deteriorate. Echo opens the door and leads V outside. She sees a large tree with the Firelight's hideout built around it. Some members gliding on hoverboards. The area is full of life, with birdsong and fireflies. V asks if Echo built the place, and he replies that he did, but not alone. He recalls how, after Vander's death, Silco took control of the lanes, flooding it with shimmer. Everyone in the Firelight hideout is a former victim of Silco in some way. V expresses regret for not being there to help, but Echo tells her not to blame herself. He then says Powder is gone and only Jinx remains, but V refuses to accept this, believing she can still reach Powder and undo the damage Silco caused. Echo disagrees, but drops the subject and shows V a piece of graffiti. It depicts those they've lost over the years, including V, Benzo, Vander, Clagor, Milo, a young Powder, and others. He calls their loss the price of freedom and explains that while some were killed by enforcers, most fell to Silco. He adds that Jinx is working for Silco willingly. V's resolve seems to waver. On the bridge, a riot has broken out. Enforcers hold back people from the Undercity. Victor sits on the sidelines observing the chaos. It appears he was caught by enforcers upon returning from the Undercity. Jace thanks Marcus for informing him that Victor had been found. Victor asks Jace what's happening, clearly out of the loop. Jace is angry, saying it reflects poorly on him that his own colleague is breaking the new rules. Victor struggles to understand the need for the blockade, and Jace explains that some from the Undercity want to destroy them, calling them dangerous. Victor reminds him that he too is from the Undercity. This finally gets through to Jace, who apologizes and asks if Victor's friend was able to help with the Hex Core. Victor gives a negative response, apparently reconsidering his belief that Jace would understand his taking Shimmer. Jace assures him they will find a solution. At that moment, someone from the other side of the blockade throws a Molotov cocktail, which explodes near the two inventors. Jace looks stern once more. Silco and Savika ride an elevator in a grand building with large windows and arches. This is another council similar to Piltover's, but its members are all criminals. A man with a metallic lower jaw and face tattoos speaks out against Silco, accusing him of losing control over his operations. Silco enters carrying a box, reminding them that a meeting wasn't scheduled. The man insists they need one as their profits are dropping. A woman agrees, citing the financial losses from the blockade. The man asks Silco how he plans to resolve the issue. Silco places the box on the table. A fan overhead stops as Finn, the man with the metallic jaw, suggests returning the Hexgem to restore peace and business. Silco insists Jinx will deal with the blockade, but Finn laughs, claiming Silco has lost control of Jinx. He questions how Silco can handle larger issues when he can't manage his own ranks. Savika, now wearing a gas mask, releases a canister, filling the room with gas. The crime bosses start coughing and choking. Silco, handing out masks while not wearing one himself, reminds them that this gas is from the mines they once worked in, the same air they used to breathe in the lanes. He says he's the one who gave them wealth, a taste of Piltover's luxury and fresh air. He accuses them, particularly Finn, of becoming soft. Finn, coughing violently, stands his ground for a while, but eventually collapses and begs Silco for a mask. Silco waits before giving him one, warning him not to forget his place ever again. As the fan restarts, Silco and Sevika leave the room. Mel watches the sunset over Piltover as her assistant, Elora, approaches. Elora informs her that their overseas friends are growing restless and concerned about the city's situation. Mel replies that Jace isn't ready for whatever she is planning. Elora reveals something else, pulling out an envelope. Mel is surprised by the seal on it. Elsewhere, Caitlin is finally freed. A child in a firelight mask kneels before her after removing her bag, offering a bowl of water. An enforcer knocks the bowl away and it lands in front of Echo, who glares at Caitlin. She asks where V is and tells Echo he should release V, as Caitlin is the real threat, not her. Just then, V appears behind Echo, half mocking Caitlin by calling her a hero. Caitlin is confused. Echo speaks, saying V vouches for her, so the Firelights will let Caitlin return home unharmed. Caitlin's expression shows dismay. Silco is about to administer the injection into his damaged eye when Jinx suddenly appears. She retrieves the syringe sitting in Silco's lap in a way that goes beyond their usual father-daughter dynamic. Silco asks where she has been, and she cryptically replies that she was chasing dead ends that turned out to be alive. When Silco begins to explain, Jinx deliberately stabs him in the face with the syringe. Silco blames Marcus, stating the enforcer never informed him that V was alive. Jinx pricks him again, pointing out that Silco didn't tell her about V even after learning she had returned. Silco insists he was only trying to protect her, claiming that V didn't come back for her, but for the Hex Gem. He reminds Jinx that V abandoned her, while he, Silco, provided her with a home and care. Jinx, on the verge of breaking down, tearfully administers the injection into Silco's eye, as originally intended. By the time Silco's brief agony from the treatment subsides, Jinx has disappeared. Caitlin is being shown around Echo's hideout and remarks on its beauty. Echo, however, retorts that if it were up to people like her, the place would be nothing but ashes. Caitlin defends herself, explaining that the situation is a misunderstanding, as the Topsiders believe that the Firelights are allied with Silco. Echo, angry, counters that enforcers hunt them like animals and that Silco is paying them to do so. Caitlin refuses to accept that she's part of a corrupt system, and tensions rise until V intervenes, reminding them they share a common enemy, Silco. Still wary, Echo pulls out the Hex Gem and asks Caitlin to identify it. She explains that the gem, stolen by Jinx, is a powerful artifact capable of powering any Hextech machine. It's also the reason the enforcers are cracking down on the Undercity, as Piltover is desperate to recover it. Echo wants to keep the Hex Gem to end Silco's reign with it, but Caitlin argues that doing so would perpetuate violence. She proposes returning the gem and informing the Council that she retrieved it with the help of the Undercity, especially the Firelights, hoping this will show Piltover that not everyone in the lanes is an enemy, potentially starting a healing process. Echo agrees, but with one condition: he wants to be the one to return the Hex Gem. Meanwhile, Victor is carefully disassembling what they believe to be a Firelight bomb, noting that while it's crude, it is also inspired. Jace asks if the person capable of building such a device could figure out Hextech, but Victor doubts it, though he doesn't entirely dismiss the possibility. Mel, who is also present, asserts that they don't have the luxury of waiting to find out. Confused, Victor asks what Mel expects them to do. She suggests getting ahead of their opponents. Jace seems hesitant, questioning whether Mel is proposing they weaponize Hextech. Victor, visibly upset, outright rejects the idea, stating that weapons were never their goal. Jace adds that doing so would make peace unattainable, reminding them that Heimerdinger would never agree. Mel counters by saying Heimerdinger's inaction is what led to their current predicament, arguing that Hextech weapons would secure peace, as the Undercity wouldn't dare to attack them. As she leaves, Jace is left deep in thought, while Victor calls the idea absurd, hoping Jace isn't seriously considering it. Jace wonders aloud if Mel has a point, but Victor reminds him that they are scientists, not soldiers. Despite this, Jace suggests that their knowledge could protect the city. Victor maintains that Hextech is meant to improve lives, not end them, and in his frustration, accidentally activates the bomb. He quickly cuts the right wire, diffusing it before it explodes. They barely react to their near-death experience. Jace, uncertain, says they might not have a choice, but Victor insists there's always another way. Jace, still pondering, leaves. Elsewhere, the bat-like warrior opens a heavy door, allowing Echo, V, and Caitlin to exit. Meanwhile, a small hooded figure, likely Heimerdinger, is seen crossing a river toward the Undercity on a little boat. In his workshop, Victor opens a hidden compartment in his cane and pulls out a vial of shimmer. He carves runes into his leg braces as the hex core hovers above his workbench. In his old room, Jace flips through a book, coming across an image of an ascending figure bathed in light. The same scene Heimerdinger remembered when first examining the hex core. Turning the page, Jace finds a piece of paper hidden in the book. As firefly-like green beetles flutter around, V explains to Caitlin that these are the original firelights, though there seem to be more of them than she remembers. Jinx perches on a statue, watching the closed bridge below. Victor loads the shimmer into a syringe gun and holds it to his leg. As his mother enters the room, Jace hugs her, admitting that he might have to do something he never imagined. Behind him, a child's drawing of a warrior with a warhammer lies open on the table. Heimerdinger reaches the Undercity as Victor injects shimmer into his leg, then cuts his palm, offering the shimmer-infused blood to the hex core, which appears to accept it and starts to alter his biology. V, Caitlin, and Echo begin crossing the bridge, which is eerily empty with no enforcers in sight, only abandoned barricades. V suddenly stops, saying she can't leave Powder behind again. Echo insists that Powder no longer exists, but V argues that she has to try. The two old friends embrace, saying goodbye. Caitlin hugs V as well, thanking her for everything. Jinx, observing from above, watches the exchange. Ghostly whispers surround her, and a vision of Milo, his eyes glowing white, stands behind her. Jinx tries to convince herself that the hug means nothing. V turns back toward the Undercity, while Caitlin and Echo continue toward Piltover. Suddenly, lights flood the bridge and a voice commands them to stop. Enforcers raise their rifles and Marcus steps forward. Recognizing him, Caitlin shows her badge, claiming she has evidence against Silco. Echo reveals the hex gem, which Jinx also sees from her hiding place. Marcus, visibly torn, draws his gun and shoots Echo. Hearing the shot, V stops and turns. Marcus points his gun at Caitlin, recovering the hex gem. Jinx, witnessing this, believes V has chosen the Enforcer over her. Marcus, more sorrowful than angry, tells Caitlin he warned her to stay out of the case. V runs toward them as a swarm of mechanical firelight beetles land on the Enforcer's weapons. One insect lands on Marcus's gun, just as he struggles with the decision to kill Caitlin. The beetles explode, emitting a greenish light, killing several Enforcers. Echo, protected by his body armor, regains consciousness. Amidst the destruction, Jinx hums a tune, walking through the aftermath. Caitlin survives, though injured. Jinx shoots a remaining Enforcer, prompting V to run again. Marcus, dying, asks Caitlin to tell his daughter something, but he dies before he could finish his sentence. Jinx continues her approach, still humming. V reaches Caitlin first, helping her up, while Jinx grabs the Hexgem container. She scoffs at V supporting Caitlin. Although Caitlin is barely conscious and doesn't acknowledge Jinx, Jinx imagines her laughing. Furious, Jinx raises her machine gun and opens fire on V and Caitlin. The force of the projectiles sends them stumbling, but Echo intervenes, flying between them and raising his mace. He knocks Jinx's weapon from her hands, but she pulls out a sidearm and shoots at Echo, damaging his hoverboard. Echo leaps off the board, snatches the container from Jinx, and lands in front of V and Caitlin. He throws the hex gem to them, telling them to run, intending to face Jinx alone. After one last look between V and Jinx, V helps Caitlin escape while Echo steps in to block Jinx's view. Jinx taunts him as he pulls out his reinforced pocket watch. She chuckles and reloads her gun. Echo, seeing her as the child he once knew, watches reality warp into the graffiti-like visuals that began the episode. They alternate between fighting as young adults and playing as children. Back in reality, Echo dodges her shots, overpowers Jinx, and pins her down. However, he hesitates, recognizing her as a frightened, disturbed young woman. His moment of indecision allows Jinx to pull the safety pin of a grenade. There is another explosion on the bridge. V, hearing it, turns, close to tears. Both Jinx and Echo appear dead. Early in this episode, we discover that the leader of the Firelights is Echo. This is no surprise for those familiar with the game, as Echo was the founder and leader of a similar group there, called the Lost Children of Zon. V and Echo are finally reunited in this episode, though in the game they do not share any childhood memories. Since both grew up in Zorn as street kids, it is likely they crossed paths at some point, but they are neither friends nor enemies and have no significant connection in the game. While the Lost Children focused on their own survival above all, the Firelights are also a rebellious force opposing Silco. With Singed giving Victor Shimmer, the young inventor's transformation begins. In the game, he augmented his own body, though not with the use of Shimmer but through Hextech and other methods, to the point where he became more machine than human. Parts of his in-game design appear in the series, such as the mechanical arm he reveals to Heimerdinger. Singed states that he once worked with Heimerdinger, but they parted ways due to fundamental disagreements about scientific advancement. Despite Heimerdinger's long lifespan, there is no indication in the game's lore that they ever met. In the Firelight hideout, a plush toy of Teemo, the in-game champion from Heimerdinger's species, can be seen. Many key scenes take place on the bridge connecting Piltover and the Undercity. This bridge does not exist in the game, as the two cities' locations differ, with Zorn being literally beneath Piltover. Though Jace is shown to be conflicted about weaponizing Hextech when Mel suggests it, in the game he is the one who independently creates the first Hextech weapon, believing he must protect Piltover the only way he can, by using his intelligence. Also surrounded by graffiti and skilled in engineering, Echo is a kind of anti-Jinx, aiming to protect and provide safety rather than causing chaos. In the game, V played this opposing role. Echo's reinforced pocket watch reappears along with other time-related references throughout the episode. These all point to the Z-Drive, a time-manipulating device Echo built in the game, allowing him to rewind time. Even his fight with Jinx mirrors this, first with the distinct visuals, then with him effortlessly dodging bullets, as if he knew already where they would strike. Arcane Episode 8, Oil and Water. A younger Mel stands in a throne room gazing at a broken, blood-stained throne. A strongly built woman approaches from behind and begins telling a story about Mel's grandfather. Her father, who once tasked the woman with retrieving blades from fallen soldiers after a battle. The stated reason was that the victors needed metal to rebuild, but she knew the real lesson: to accustom her to death. Mel comments that her brother Kino believes war is always a mistake. Her mother dismisses this, calling Kino too soft, thinking of himself as a fox in a world of wolves. Mel starts to envision their future reign, picturing the throne room restored. She brainstorms about the ideal candidate for regent, suggesting someone intelligent, but not so much that they couldn't control her from the shadows. Her mother proposes that Mel herself could take the throne, but only if she proves herself first. Two soldiers enter, escorting a captured woman, no older than Mel. Her face reflects the despair of having lost hope. Ambessa, Mel's mother, asks what should be done with the prisoner. Mel suggests stripping her of all possessions and exiling her. Ambessa points out that the prisoner is a symbol of hope for the old regime, and while killing her now would cost only one life, sparing her could spark a rebellion that costs thousands. Mel counters that showing mercy could win over their new subjects. Without hesitation, Ambessa decapitates the prisoner, telling Mel that wolves show no mercy. An adult Mel jolts awake as if from a nightmare. The painting she was working on now hangs behind her bed. Jace is asleep beside her. Alarms ring out in the night. In a reversal of roles, V is now supporting Caitlin. She places Kate in an alley, promising to return soon, and heads back out. On the bridge, Silco stands over Marcus's body. Not far off, he spots Jinx. Calling out her name, he rushes to her. Meanwhile, V tries to return to the bridge, but the streets are now crawling with enforcers, blocking her way. Silco embraces Jinx, her hand clutching the glowing hex gem. Opening the container, Caitlin finds it empty. Silco and V make eye contact as Jinx begins to stir. Silco lifts Jinx into his arms, and with his bodyguards, he retreats to the Undercity. V watches helplessly as her sister is taken from her once again. At sunrise, Jace and Mel survey the many dead enforcers on the bridge, Marcus among them. Both appear shaken. An enforcer speaks to Jace, saying he's under orders to escort him back to the city limits. Jace doesn't respond, his breathing quickens, and a moment later, he leans over the bridge's handrail and vomits. On the ground, he notices a malfunctioning mechanical bug, recognizing its design from his lab. His expression reveals that he knows the devastation was caused by technology stolen from his work. Mel, on the other hand, remains composed, growing angrier instead of showing any weakness. V carefully opens a window from the outside and jumps into a room, helping Caitlin in afterward. Surprised by the luxury, V asks Kate if this is another council friend's home. Suddenly, Mrs. Kierman kicks open the door, rifle in hand. Upon seeing that her daughter is one of the intruders, she lowers the weapon. Mr. Kierman enters, rushing to embrace Caitlin. Mrs. Kierman, still composed, acknowledges V, and Caitlin introduces her, explaining that V is from the Undercity. Mrs. Kierman dryly notes that it's obvious and requests to speak to Kate in private. The Kiermans walk out, leaving a somewhat bewildered V behind. As Mr. Kierman tends to Caitlin's wounds, carefully picking out fragments of mechanical bugs, Caitlin insists that she must speak to the council. Mrs. Kierman cautions her, pointing out that Caitlin has broken numerous laws, so involving the council may not be the best option. Mr. Kierman defends their daughter, saying she acted based on what she believed was right. Caitlin is ready to take responsibility for her actions, but her mother reminds her that as a council member's daughter, she cannot make that decision alone, since her actions reflect not just on her, but on the entire council. Frustrated, Caitlin snaps, accusing the council of not caring about the people of the Undercity. She is clearly moved by her recent experiences in the lanes and beyond. Somewhat persuaded by her daughter's passion, Mrs. Kierman agrees to convene a meeting where Caitlin and V can present their case to the council. In his cave-like home, Singed is working on his disfigured face. The door swings open as Silco enters, carrying an unconscious and gravely wounded Jinx. Strapping her to a table, Singed informs Silco that he might be able to save her, but the process will be excruciatingly painful and could change her forever. He suggests that she may be better off dying peacefully. Silco refuses to consider it, insisting that Jinx can endure the pain. She awakens briefly, coughing and sobbing, as Singed prepares a syringe filled with a green liquid. Silco, kissing her forehead as she loses consciousness again, assures her she cannot die. Apologizing, Singed injects Silco with the green substance, rendering him unconscious as well. As Silco fades into darkness, he hears Singed mention that he once had a daughter too. At the last drop, Savika is fixing something on her mechanical arm when Finn, the man with the metal jaw, arrives. Savika tells him that Silco isn't there, but Finn says he's come for her. He compliments her business acumen before subtly suggesting that despite her success, she doesn't own the business. Finn insinuates that Silco and Jinx profit from her hard work, while she is left to clean up their messes. Annoyed, Savika scoffs, saying she didn't think Finn could be any more foolish. Yet, here he is, attempting to persuade her to betray Silco. Her arm now functioning again, she reveals a hidden blade. Finn, dropping any pretense, asserts that Silco is losing control, and the Undercity is spiraling into chaos. He claims that Jinx is unhinged and Silco cannot control her anymore. Even if Savika's pride doesn't drive her to betray Silco, Finn argues, her intellect should recognize how dire the situation has become. Before leaving, Finn hints that others are thinking along the same lines, and some of them wield more power than Silco. In the harbor, a ship's hull opens, revealing Ambessa Medada, Mel's mother. Mel stands nearby with her assistant, Elora. She asks her mother why she is there, and Ambessa states it has been 10 years since they last saw each other. Mel corrects her, asserting that it has been 10 years since Ambessa exiled her. She exhibits open hostility toward her mother. Nevertheless, they walk together as Ambessa informs Mel that her brother has died, apparently angering the wrong person. She then mentions Hex Tech weaponry, to which Mel responds defiantly, asserting that Piltover is not like their homeland and that war is not the solution to everything, despite having initially proposed the concept of Hextech weapons. Ambessa claims that war is inevitable and has come to ensure that Mel, as a council member, makes the right decisions. At that moment, an airship appears and a man much younger than Ambessa calls her aboard in a flirtatious manner. Caitlin enters her room to find V lying on the bed, examining the clues the Enforcer collected before departing for the Undercity. Kate tells V that they will present their case before the council that evening, but V remains focused on the clues, remarking that Caitlin can become more obsessed than Powder. The other woman sits on the bed and reassures V that whatever has happened to her sister is not V's fault. She lies down beside her, and V reminisces about sleeping in the same bed as Powder during their childhood, recalling a game they played. She expresses regret over leaving her sister, prompting Caitlin to gently touch her face. V takes Caitlin's hand in hers, smiling sadly. Jinx is being pumped full of shimmer. She is in pain and hallucinates, seeing herself as a young child with V. The Phantom V shoots Kid Powder, and in her place, Caitlin appears, holding something that could be a baby. Powder mistakenly believes Caitlin is administering the next dose of shimmer, but in reality, it is Singed performing the procedure. Jinx cries out in pain. When Silco awakens, he finds the operating table, covered in blood, empty, while Singed washes his tools at the sink. Silco, still unsteady on his feet, grabs a knife and holds it to Singed's throat. Singed reassures him that Jinx is alive. Heimerdinger walks through the streets of the Undercity. Observing the poverty and violence around him, he appears more sorrowful than frightened, even when a beggar attempts to grab him. He spots a little girl who approaches and offers him a handful of bolts and bits, likely all her worldly possessions. Heimerdinger performs a few gestures reminiscent of a stage magician and creates a small, spinner-like toy from the girl's collection. Just as he intends to give the toy to her, an older woman appears and drags the girl away. As Heimerdinger walks back to his boat, preparing to return to Piltover, he notices sparks erupting nearby. Investigating, he discovers a hoverboard. Muttering to himself, he calls it a clever contraption, but adds that the propellers require fine-tuning. A nearby voice disagrees, stating that they are intentionally designed to facilitate navigation in the lanes, where the air is denser due to harmful gases. It is Echo, who hides with his back against the wall. He breathes heavily, and when Heimerdinger inquires about his condition, Echo explains that he sprained his ankle. He then asks if the little creature is indeed Counselor Heimerdinger. The professor responds that he is no longer a council member, and Echo questions why he is in the Undercity. Heimerdinger replies that he has come to help, but nobody wants his assistance. Echo chuckles, indicating that he shares a similar experience. Heimerdinger notes that Echo's injury is more serious than a mere sprain, but the young man insists that he must go home, as the area near the bridge is unsafe for him. He expresses uncertainty about how to navigate with his injured leg and damaged hoverboard. The professor examines the vehicle, already contemplating a solution. Ambessa relaxes in a bath, her legs spread apart, a warm cloth over her eyes, being massaged by the young man from before. Jace is also in the room, seemingly avoiding looking at Ambessa, yet he takes the time to correct her when she refers to him as Mr., stating it's Councillor Tallis. Jace expresses a desire to leave, and Ambessa argues that the council is weak and inexperienced with violence, making them incapable of handling the current crisis. Jace counters that Piltover is a city of scientists who are not strangers to failure, and that they will persist until they succeed. Ambessa stands, revealing her strong but scarred body, previously obscured by the water. Jace appears embarrassed. She approaches him and tells him that while he possesses passion, which is beneficial, she has experience, which is superior, and she wants to help him succeed before he ends up dead. The council engages in another argument, with one member complaining about delayed shipments and deteriorating business arrangements. One of them stating that their problems are far more significant, especially with Marcus's betrayal now widely known. They are uncertain about what is truly happening in their city. Jace listens intently, toying with the wing of one of Jinx's mechanical bugs. He urges the council to act before more lives are lost, and a member suggests that Marcus might have acted alone, questioning what anyone in the Undercity could offer in exchange for his services. Entering alongside V, Caitlin informs them that Marcus acted not for gain, but to protect his daughter, whom Silco has threatened. She then introduces V and recounts her experiences in the Undercity. Caitlin explains that behind all the suffering lies Silco, and the robotic council member, Bolbok, states that they have been investigating Silco but found him not to be a serious threat. Caitlin argues that the investigation was conducted by Marcus, rendering the results untrustworthy. Jace asks what Silco's intentions are, and Caitlin replies that he seeks an independent Undercity. Jace produces a grenade, inquiring about its creator. Caitlin hesitates, but with a firm grip on her hand, V steps forward, revealing that the inventor's name is Jinx. Upon hearing that this same person possesses the hex gem, Jace proposes retrieving it by force. Mel objects, arguing that such an action could lead to war between the two sides of the city. Caitlin insists there are innocent people in the Undercity, but a member counters that there are also bad ones. Another reminds them that the Undercity has Shimmer, providing a significant military advantage. Jace argues they can level the playing field with Hex Tech, prompting Caitlin to admonish him, questioning what is wrong with him. Jace remains adamant about the invasion plan, but Mel asserts that he knows nothing about war, while she understands it must be a last resort. The council agrees, and V erupts upon learning they wish to negotiate with Silco. She delivers a passionate speech about Silco's unwillingness to relent, emphasizing that he must be stopped, which results in her being escorted out of the room. Caitlin follows after her. Outside, it is a rainy evening. Caitlin catches up with V and asks where she is going. V responds that she is going back home, as it is clear that the top side wants her to leave. Caitlin insists that she can still rectify what happened, but V does not believe her, stating that this is always how it ends, with the Undercity being shunned and worse off. Caitlin suggests they need a new plan and must try again, but V seems to believe that change is unattainable. Caitlin then shifts the conversation to a more personal level, asking what will happen to the two of them if V leaves. V tells her that Caitlin should just return to her luxurious home and forget she exists, as topsiders and Undercity dwellers were never meant to be together. She then walks away, leaving Caitlin staring after her in the rain. At the harbour, Victor stands, his injured leg now discolored, with veins glowing from the shimmer. He drops his cane and takes a deep breath. His first few steps are hesitant, but soon he jogs, then runs at full speed, stumbling occasionally but otherwise moving quickly and confidently. He cries out in joy at his newfound mobility. Back in the laboratory, Victor prepares a scalpel, likely readying himself for further modifications to his body. The hex core appears active and waiting. Outside, in the corridor, the assistant Skye approaches, practicing how she will present her work to Victor, clearly harboring a significant crush on him. The man attempts to inject more shimmer, but the vial is empty. In desperation, he cuts his hand again, offering his blood to the hex core in hopes of further improvement. As Skye opens the door, she sees Victor standing before the core, windblown and possibly in pain. The device appears to be malfunctioning. Skye lunges forward to help Victor, wrapping her arms around his waist and trying to pull him away from the hex core. An eruption of energy occurs and Skye simply evaporates, ceasing to exist. A second eruption engulfs Victor, but he survives, awakening on the floor with energy crackling on his leg and now his hand, both similarly discolored. All that remains of Skye are her broken glasses and some of her clothes, half buried in her ashes. Victor is shocked, unable to comprehend what has happened. The hex core hovers over the desk, having taken on a more spiky and sinister appearance. Jace is at the forge, working diligently. He utilizes runes and a hex gem to create something when V enters the room behind him. She asks if Jace truly intends to hunt down Silco, and he responds that he could have her arrested for trespassing. V asks if he has ever been in Stillwater Prison, and when he answers negatively, she tells him that topsiders love to issue orders to lock people away without understanding what that place is really like and what it does to a person. Now, Jace expresses his desire to find Silco, and V declares she wants to join him. Jace explains that the council has denied the notion of an invasion, so there is nothing for her to join. However, V insists they should ignore the council and accomplish the task themselves. She notices a gauntlet enhanced with hex tech, and Jace explains it is a mining device. She continues, revealing that Jace was the first person Caitlin wanted to see upon returning, and that he was her first choice to ask for help. Jace is unsure of what can be done about Silco, and V tells him that Silco's influence stems from Shimmer. If they destroy the factories producing it, the crime boss will be rendered powerless, and his own people will turn against him. Jace appears to consider this, staring into the forge's flames. In a factory, workers are packing barrels onto a train, some marked with the familiar X. As the locomotive departs, a guard lights a cigarette, and from behind, someone presses a gun to his head. The train crashes back into the building, and enforcers pour out, accompanied by Jace, who now wields a Hex-Tech-enhanced warhammer. the enforcers begin arresting everyone in sight, including children who are working in the factory. One child manages to slip away and pushes an alarm button, awakening warriors clad in shimmered-up armor. They are incredibly fast and strong, easily overpowering the enforcers. On a footbridge, Jace finds himself surrounded, and just as one warrior moves to attack, V falls from above, wearing the Hextech gauntlets. With a single strike, she takes down an armored warrior, landing beside Jace. She winks at him, and they begin to combat the remaining warriors. Despite their formidable armor, the warriors are no match for the superior Hextech weapons, and the two of them swiftly dispatch the opposing forces. Jace's warhammer is capable of firing energy blasts, and when he attempts to strike a guard, he accidentally shoots a child, who then falls from the bridge. Once the battle concludes, Jace and V rush to find the boy, but just as they reach him, he dies. Jace looks at the arrested workers, all of whom stare at him, fully aware that he has just killed a child. Caitlin stands in the shower, her injured leg oozing blood, reliving V's farewell. As she exits, she sees the familiar monkey head on the fogged-up mirror, and Jinx appears behind her, one eye glowing like Silco's, but with the pinkish hue of the shimmer. This episode marks the first appearance of Ambessa Medada, Mel's mother. Interestingly, following the show's release, she is being added to the game as a playable character. Mel's flashback shows how her mother took over the Noxian Empire, but in the game this did not occur, as Noxus is ruled by Jericho Swain. Fans speculate that Swain is responsible for killing Mel's brother and poses a threat to Ambessa's rule in Arcane. Singe tells Silco that he once had a daughter. While this is not part of the game's lore, fans have various theories about which game character he might be referencing. In this episode, Heimerdinger visits the Undercity, hoping to help those in need. This never happens in the game's history, as the professor remains solely in Piltover. Another addition to the series is Heimerdinger spending time with Echo. The two never meet in the game. Similarly, Echo, now injured after his fight with Jinx, has never encountered her in the game. As Echo mainly focuses on keeping his lost children alive, and Jinx only attacks Piltover, not Zon, they have no reason to fight each other. Council member Bolbog, who appears throughout the season, primarily in council meetings, is another original character created for Arcane. In Sky's notes, the final rune, often seen in the game but missing from the Hex core in the series, appears, indicating that she solved the issues with the core. However, she never gets to present her findings to Victor, as the core, described as adapting and thinking, kills her. In Jace's forge, V finally acquires the Atlas gauntlets. These are her primary weapons in the game, though she obtains them differently there. The battle at the end of the episode is also the first time we see Jace wielding the Mercury Hammer, his iconic in-game weapon. Arcane Episode 9, The Monster You Created. Jace gently closes the eyes of the boy he has killed. From behind, V speaks, telling him that the boy knew what he was a part of, and Jace had no other choice. Jace says he has had enough, but V objects, pointing out that this was just one of many factories, and they have barely started. Jace is unable to move on from the fact that he is now a murderer, a part of this endless cycle of violence. V tells him that he has always been involved in it, as by looking the other way as a Piltover citizen, he has enabled Silco to cause hundreds of deaths, just like this boy's. Jace says their offensive is over, but V replies that it isn't over for her. Jace demands that she give the Hextech gauntlets back, but V challenges him to take them if he can. Jace grabs his hammer, and V says it looks like he is ready to kill another Undercity dweller. After a tense moment, Jace deactivates the Warhammer and walks away, telling V she can't win alone. V walks over to the boy's body, looking at him with a regretful expression. Then, using the gauntlet, she strikes a shimmer container. Silco stands in front of the same, now broken container. Savika comments that it has been a long time since Topsiders have been bold enough to carry out an attack like this. Silco, a bit reminiscent, remarks that Marcus, problematic as he was, had been a useful person to have on the payroll. Savika reminds him that it was Jinx who killed the lead enforcer, and Silco, somewhat angrily, says that he will buy another officer to replace Marcus. Rennie, a woman from the criminal council, kneels beside the dead boy, demanding to know what Silco intends to do about his killer. She recalls his earlier promise that Jinx would not let things get this far. Silco says he shares Rennie's pain over her dead son, adding that the boy died a hero, fighting for their cause. In the background, Finn toys with his cigarette lighter, as he often does. Rennie asks if Silco even knows where Jinx is. Avoiding the question, he tells Savika to assist Rennie with the boy's body. Savika exchanges a significant look with Finn before obeying. Victor sits on the floor of his workshop, wearing his spine brace, holding Sky's broken glasses, sobbing. Then he notices her paper holder. Upon opening it, he finds the first page of a letter addressed to him. It theorizes a solution to the hex core's incompatibility with living matter and says Victor's relentless work to make the world a better place inspired her to do the same. Still sobbing, Victor stands up with difficulty and raises a stool, ready to destroy the hex core. But he drops the stool and turns away from the device. The hex core reacts, flashing lights, and Victor, weakened by his altered leg, collapses. Ambessa Medada lounges on a balcony, sipping wine and comparing it to those of her homeland. She comments that everything there is harder and tougher, a necessity to survive the environment. A young man kneels beside her, massaging her feet. Mel approaches, angrily slapping the cup from her mother's hand and ordering the young admirer to leave. She tells Ambessa to leave Jace alone and suggests that Ambessa's departure from Piltover would be even better. Ambessa breaks open a lobster-like creature and slurps from it, motioning for the guard at the door to leave. She then tells Mel that her reign back home is in danger, as the man who killed Mel's brother is not finished, and his resources far exceed her own. She says she needs Hextech weaponry to win, but Mel replies that Piltover is not hers to experiment on. Ambessa points out that the idea originated from Mel, and she is merely speeding up the process. Mel counters, saying her intention was to protect the city, not start a war. Ambessa claims she is trying to protect their family, but Mel retorts that she hasn't been part of that family since her exile. Mel asks why her mother exiled her, and Ambessa reveals that she needed Mel far away because her daughter made her want to be a better person, a person who couldn't make the decisions required for war. Mel hesitates, unsure of how to respond. Ambessa pushes further, suggesting that with Hextech weaponry, they could return home together and fight side by side. Victor sits in his usual spot on the dam side in the mouth of the big pipe. Apologizing, he says he didn't know what Sky would have preferred, and he pours her ashes into the water below. He coughs and uses his cane to walk again. The effects of Shimmer appear to have worn off, leaving him in the same condition as before, without a new dose. Victor steps close to the ledge, contemplating a jump, but Jace arrives, repeating the same words Victor had said to him years ago when he was about to do the same thing. Jace carries his warhammer. Victor hastily hides Sky's notes and glasses in his pocket. Jace reminisces about a competition they once attended, saying how clear everything seemed back then when they were only scientists. Victor tells him he needs to destroy it, and Jace looks at his warhammer, agreeing. Victor corrects him, explaining that he's not talking about the weapon, but the hex core. He adds that he tried to destroy it but couldn't, as the device now has some kind of a hold on him. Jace protests, saying Victor will die without the core, but Victor makes him promise to destroy it anyway. He then reflects on Heimerdinger's warnings, admitting that they have indeed lost their way and need to fix their mistakes before it's too late. Silco sits in his office. Despite saying he has no time for visitors, 3 people enter: Sevika, Finn, and Rennie. Sevika draws and dusts off a chair for Finn, earning a cold look from Silco, and then takes her place behind the glowing-eyed man, positioning herself as if surrounding him. Finn tells Silco that after he killed Vander, it seemed like Silco was the man the Undercity needed, smart and ruthless. But now, years later, he has grown old. Silco asks if Rennie is on Finn's side, and she confirms, still blaming Silco for her son's death. Silco tells them they are too young to remember how the Undercity used to be, and how loyalty to each other was the only thing keeping them going. At the word loyalty, Savika blinks, and under her cloak, the hidden blade in her mechanical arm emerges, ready to strike. As she moves closer to Silco, he calls Finn and Rennie parasites living off the world better people created. Finn says Silco dies today, but Silco replies that he still believes in loyalty and remains unfazed. Savika strikes, but it is Finn, not Silco, who dies. Silco tells Rennie he would have had her son killed for her betrayal, but since he's already dead, she may leave. Rennie runs out of the office. Lighting a cigar with Finn's lighter, Silco asks Savika if she was tempted to betray him. She replies that someone like Finn couldn't tempt her, but warns that he won't be the last to try. Silco picks up a paper bearing the hammer-like T of House Talus. Jace waits on a bastion overlooking the sea, with the sun setting behind the horizon. Appearing, Silco comments that it's an ideal spot for an ambush and notes Jace's lack of a weapon. Jace responds that he was reminded recently that Piltover, including both the topside and the undercity, was originally built to face external threats, not waging war on each other. A tense moment follows as Silco reaches under his coat, but he only pulls out a folded piece of paper, handing it to Jace. Reading it, Jace grows angrier with each of Silco's demands. Unlimited Hexgate access, sovereignty, and the clear intention to spread Shimmer, not only in Piltover, but globally as the leader of his own city. Jace accuses Silco of making unreasonable demands, but Silco praises his attack on the Shimmer factory, adding that the subsequent request for a meeting made him look weak. He also notes that Jace appears frightened. Jace admits he is scared, having seen firsthand how a war between Piltover and the Undercity would destroy the lanes. He claims to be the only one trying to save the Undercity from total devastation. Momentarily surprised, Silco quickly recovers, stating that his demands are the cost of peace. Jace agrees to negotiate, but insists the Shimmer factories must close, a condition to which Silco consents. Jace then demands the return of the stolen Hexgem, and Silco nods, though he doesn't possess it. Finally, Jace insists Silco hand over Jinx to be held accountable for her actions. For the first time, Silco looks genuinely fearful and claims Jinx was only following his orders. Jace counters that he would prefer to see Silco imprisoned, but he knows that Silco can't stop a war from behind bars. He concludes that for Zorn to be recognized as a sovereign nation, Silco must sacrifice Jinx. As Jace walks away, Silco, devastated, remains standing with his head lowered. Knocking sounds at a door, which rolls aside to reveal the secret hideout of the Firelights. Echo has returned, accompanied by Heimerdinger. The professor is astonished by the place, amazed that such a complex environment was built in just a few years. Echo explains with some pride that necessity drives innovation when lives are at stake. The bat-like warrior tends to Echo's broken leg as Heimerdinger inquires about the hoverboards, expressing concern. In response, the warrior bangs the shaft of a spear to the ground and shouts, "Firelights," and is echoed by voices all around. Real firelight beetles swarm around the tree as people zoom past on hoverboards. Heimerdinger looks captivated as Echo counters his safety concerns by stating that mere survival is not enough for a fulfilling life. Meanwhile, Silco sits on a pedestal speaking to a statue of Vanda. He reflects on how close he is to achieving their shared dream and pours a drink in honor of the dead. He then asks the statue if having a daughter is the most challenging thing of all. Hidden behind the statue, Jinx listens intently, her eyes widening at his words. In the last drop, the usual clamor fills the bar as patrons drink and play games. Savika is there, in the middle of a card game. A young man walks across the place, bullying someone before selecting a record with a fistfight picture for the jukebox. As he whistles and turns, he realizes the bar has gone silent. V stands before him, wearing the Hextech gauntlets. The young man scurries away, scared. V drops a helmet, part of a Shimmer Armored Guard's outfit, and Savika orders everyone to leave. She reloads her mechanical arm with Shimmer, now upgraded, and the fight begins. Both women fight viciously, with Savika gaining the upper hand by revealing her glowing pink blade, capable of cutting through nearly anything. She pierces one of V's gauntlets, injuring her arm, and laughs as V cries out in pain. V, barely conscious and bleeding, hears Vanda's voice in her head, advising her to defend herself better, and reminding her that despite life's hardships, people, especially Powder, still need her. Motivated, V pushes herself up as Savika reloads her Shimmer-enhanced mechanical arm. V spits out a tooth and stands, ready for another round. She hears Vanda's encouragement. With just one gauntlet and her injured hand, she fights back. Despite her determination, she appears to be losing again, but then she activates a feature on a gauntlet, a sort of energy shield. That stops Savika for a moment, and using that, V manages to tear off Savika's mechanical arm and throw her into a wall. Exhausted but victorious, V collapses, releasing all the tension from the brutal fight with a scream. As she picks up the damaged gauntlet, Jinx sneaks up behind her, sarcastically congratulating her before knocking her out. Under a red moon, Jace addresses the council. He reveals that during his unsanctioned mission in the Undercity, he realized that neither he nor the council is capable of governing it, as they do not understand its people. Mrs. Kiraman warns him against crossing certain lines, but Jace, influenced by his time with V, declares that he no longer cares about the council's opinions, except for Mel's, who he now believes was right all along. Jace announces that he will soon resign from the council. Victor, sitting beside him despite not being a member, represents the Undercity, informs the council that Jace made a peace agreement with Silco. The cost, he reveals, was high. Jace promised independence for the nation of Zon. The council erupts into chaos. V wakes up, staring at sparklers attached to a moving contraption. Thick ropes tie her to a chair. From the shadows, Jinx comments that she once thought this place was dead, but notes that nothing stays truly dead. They are in Silco's old hideout, now in ruins. Jinx circles V's chair, blaming her for creating Jinx, not Silco. Despite Silco's harsh lessons and speeches, it was V who shaped her. V apologizes for abandoning her, but Jinx says she never really left, as she's always heard V's voice in her mind. As the sparklers fade, darkness envelops the room. In a quiet voice, Jinx asks if they are still sisters, to which V responds that they always will be. Jinx lights candles, revealing a table set with the doll versions of Milo and Clagor and the stuffed bunny. At the table's head sits Silco, shackled and gagged. Jinx declares that Silco took everything from them just as he had betrayed Vander. Crows fly overhead as Jinx recalls how Silco lied to her about V being dead, and Silco moans in protest. Jinx mentions that one guest is still missing and steps away. V takes in the scene, noticing the bunny and Vander's pipe at another spot. Jinx returns, wearing the Hextech gauntlets, the damaged one working again, and drops a covered tray in front of V. Terrified, V fears the tray holds someone's head, especially when Jinx says she recently visited Caitlyn. Jinx lifts the lid to reveal pancakes and the Hex gem, taunting that while she may be crazy, she's not that insane. Jinx then wheels a bound but unharmed Caitlyn to the table and points to two chairs, one labeled Powder and the other painted with a pink Jinx. She tells V it's her choice where she will sit. Jinx hands V a gun, suggesting that if she kills Caitlyn, she can have Powder back. V refuses, tossing the gun aside and begs Jinx to spare Caitlyn, pleading that no one has to die. They can just go away, leaving the Lanes and Piltover forever. Jinx's grip on reality slips, and she begins arguing with the dolls, all while Silco struggles to intervene. Jinx eventually removes his gag, and Silco angrily reminds her that she is Jinx, not Powder. He warns her that V will soon see she's no longer the same person and will leave her again. V promises she's on Jinx's side, but Jinx, in frustration, shoots the Milo doll, telling it to stay quiet. Silco reveals that Jace offered him everything he ever wanted if he would give up Jinx, but he refused. While he speaks, Caitlyn slowly reaches for a broken glass. Silco accuses V and Vander of betraying them, but assures Jinx that he sees her as his daughter and would never betray her. Jinx, on the verge of tears, seems torn. Just then, Caitlyn frees herself, grabs Jinx's machine gun, and orders her to drop her weapon. V begs her to stop, though it's unclear to whom she is pleading. Caitlyn fires a warning shot and repeats her demand, ready to shoot Jinx if necessary. V continues to ask Caitlyn not to harm her. Caitlyn argues that Jinx has gone too far and there's no way back for her. Jinx finally lowers her weapon, putting it in front of Silco, but Caitlyn keeps hers aimed at Jinx. V pleads with Caitlyn not to hurt Jinx. Just as Caitlyn hesitates, Jinx's eyes flash with shimmer and she moves faster than a normal human, knocking Caitlyn unconscious despite V's warning. Silco urges Jinx to finish Caitlyn off, but V begs her not to. As V lists the names of those they've lost, trying to remind Jinx of her true self, Jinx's fragile reality collapses further. She is haunted by monstrous drawings. Silco breaks free and grabs Jinx's pistol, while Jinx lifts the 3-barreled machine gun and fires wildly. The sound sends crows scattering, and one of the chairs is riddled with bullets. Jinx stares at it, breathing heavily, and after a few seconds, it is revealed that Silco sits in the chair. He is coughing up blood now. Jinx drops her weapon and rushes to him. Crying and apologizing, Silco, barely able to speak, tells her once more that he would never have given her up and that she is perfect. Then he falls silent, seemingly dead. Jinx picks up her handgun and walks toward V. She calls her Powder, but the younger woman chooses to sit in the chair labeled Jinx. She tells V that though she had hoped V could still love her, they've both changed too much. Standing, she picks up the Hex Gem and places it into a cannon-like Hex-Tech enhanced weapon. Under the red moon, she steps outside, aiming the shark-shaped cannon at the council's chamber in Piltover. Inside, Mel removes her family ring, signaling her decision to side with Jace and refuse her mother's request for Hex-Tech weapons. At that moment, Jinx fires the cannon, sending a rocket streaking through the sky. Blinding light, some kind of Hex-Tech energy envelope Jinx as she does so. Savika sits in Silco's office, missing her mechanical arm, trying to light one of his cigars. Heimerdinger and Echo talk in the Firelight's hideout. The council votes, with most members following Mel's lead, supporting Jace's proposal for an independent Undercity and peace. Ambessa enters Mel's room and sees her daughter has defaced her own painting. Meanwhile, the rocket continues its trajectory as V and Caitlyn, supporting each other, leave Silco's ruined hideout. Caitlyn weeps, while V watches the rocket in shock. There is no sign of Jinx. Just as Jace and Mel exchange smiles, confident that peace has been secured, the rocket crashes through the council chamber's large window directly behind Mel. The glass shatters and the image of the grinning monkey flashes before everything goes dark. Accidentally killing a child is a pivotal moment in Jace's character arc. However, this never occurs in the game, where he is portrayed as a noble protector of Piltover. V and Jace's alliance proves to be short-lived as the inventor, regretting his actions, renounces violence. This is more interaction than in the game, where they never team up. When Victor attempts to destroy the Hex Core, it incapacitates him, further emphasizing that the device now has a will of its own. After Sky's death, Victor tells Jace that he now agrees with Heimerdinger, admitting they have lost their way as scientists. This contradicts the game's lore, where Victor symbolizes relentless progress no matter the cost. Although neither Silco nor Finn exist in the game, and their final confrontation lacks a direct equivalent in the game's lore, the Chem Barons are indeed part of League of Legends, and their power struggles over Zorn frequently shape the story. Heimerdinger is introduced to the Firelights, taking his character in a completely different direction from his in-game counterpart, who remains a member of Piltover's elite. At Jace's urging, the council votes to let the Undercity become the independent city of Zorn. In the game, this was not a political decision, but the outcome of a war and a natural disaster. The shark-like rocket launcher Jinx uses in this episode is one of her signature weapons in the game, called Fishbone. The season ends with Jinx firing a Hex Gem enhanced rocket at the council chamber, presumably killing several main characters. Although she is a known and wanted terrorist in the game, she has never done this. In fact, she has never directly attacked any council members in the game's lore. And when you get the chance, check out our Game of Thrones inspired Choose Your Own Adventure game here on YouTube by clicking the video link on the screen right now.